1, 2.
Check 1, 2, check.
Check 1, 2. As a reminder, masks will be mandatory while we're running town meeting. Please put your masks on.
Masks are mandatory. It's what was posted on the website.
What? Masks are mandatory and the whole
It was
place.
posted on the website.
All right.
Do you have any masks in there?
Oh, no, they're good. What, for you?
This is what we're doing.
So,
Hi, baby.
and she has no counters so far, so we only
Okay.
have the one.
If you are willing to be a counter, I need 7 additional counters for today. If you'd be willing to count, please come on up. We'll get you signed up.
Probably going to want to remind people to get really close to the microphone.
Well,
They stand this far apart.
yep. I still need 6 additional counters, people to help count the vote. So if you're willing to help count the vote, come on up, write your name down on the green piece of paper.
Good luck, my friend.
The Board of Health just said if we're fully vaccinated, we don't have to.
Okay.
All others are going to.
All right.
I'll make that announcement.
Good, how are you doing, Tim?
Okay. I know how
Do you want me to create a counter?
Our administrator is speaking to you.
I know how he felt. How did you feel when you jumped out of the plane?
Oh,
She jumped too.
Huh?
She jumped
I
too.
just asked her.
I didn't like watching my daughter's fall. That got me surprisingly.
She thought it was the last time you'd seen her.
It was just a visceral, guttural reaction. I saw one big sob. I was like, nope, didn't enjoy that. And then I would never do it again. I would never recommend doing it with your children.
I did it with my daughter when she turned 18.
You did? See, he didn't mind, or maybe his mom.
She loved it.
He loved it. He didn't think about
I
that.
couldn't
I
stop
spent the
laughing.
whole time. I realized now. I played back in my head. The only things I asked the guy were, "Are they down yet? Did they make it down?"
We heard he got down first.
Yes, and out last. Yes, I did watch somebody spinning around too. Oh, I really did. Son of my daughter. So yes. Do you still need counters?
It's a good message. Of being important.
Hiding?
Yes.
I don't need anything else.
Excuse me? Libby? Do you want to be a counter? Do you want to be a counter? Yep. I'm just going to go with the fire. Good morning. Good morning. Afternoon. Good afternoon. It's actually 12:01. As I announced earlier, masks are mandated under the tent. Please put them on. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. We need one more counter for this morning in case I need help counting votes. Is there one more individual willing to help count votes? I need one more. Please come on up. Thank you. With that, I ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As a reminder, if you would please turn off your cell phones. I would appreciate it. Put them on vibrate. Thank you. At today's meeting, the following non-voters will be allowed to speak. Tim Bragan, Town Administrator. Mark Lanza, Town Council. Chris Ryan, Economic Development Director. Chief Richard Sicard, Fire Chief. Debbie Thompson, COA Director. Jeff Hayes, building inspector, John Zikowitz, the Lyro Group, which is the COA architect. At check-in, you all should have gotten your blue cards. This is how you're going to vote. When I call for a vote, you're going to raise the card and I'll count. If it's something I'm able to do and see the majority or 2/3, we'll call that. Otherwise, I will lean on my counters that we now have to help count the vote. I hope this is our last town meeting under this tent. Maybe. We have a lot of business today, 19 warrant articles. I'm going to ask that as individuals get up to speak, you keep in mind these are your neighbors, these are your friends. These are people who are volunteering their time to help town move forward. Let's keep our thoughts, our questions directed to me, and I will then hand them over to somebody to answer if need be. Let's try and keep our statements with some new thoughts, some new ideas. If you've already heard what you wanted to talk about expressed, I kindly respect that, or ask you to respect everybody's time and sit down. The goal is to really make sure we bring new thought and new discussion here. I'm going to ask that you keep seats where they were. Social distancing, please. A little late, there's something moved. Just make sure you got about 3 feet between you, please. When you come to the mic, go to close to the mic, please. If you stand too far back, you're not going to be able to be heard. No one's going to be able to hear what you're going to say. Exactly. So stand close to the mic. I'd appreciate it. If at some point you see me raise my hand while you're speaking, I don't want to interrupt you, but that's my way to interrupt you for a second so I can have a conversation with you. Okay? With that, I believe we're ready to get going. I want you to remember that the town election is on Tuesday, November 2nd, for everything that's there for a vote as well. Do we have a quorum? We do. Okay. So with that, Article 1, purchase of the Senior Service Building, Council on Aging.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator, Town Meeting, Stu Sklar, Chair of the Select Board. I move the town authorize the Select Board to acquire by purchase, gift, eminent domain, or otherwise the condominium unit located at 16 Lancaster County Road, Unit Number 2, Lancaster County Place Condominiums, Harvard, Massachusetts, and described in the unit deed recorded with the Worcester Registry of Deeds in Book 42146, page 151, for the purpose of providing a single-level, easily accessible senior center. B, appropriate the sum of $2,644,833 to be expended by the Select Board for the acquisition, design, construction, reconstruction, and renovation of a building at said property for said purpose, and C, provide for said appropriation by authorizing the town treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, to borrow a sum of money pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, provided, however, that this appropriation and debt authorization shall be contingent upon passage of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion referendum ballot question under Massachusetts General Law 59, subsection 21, Chapter C, subparagraph K.
Second.
It's been seconded.
Part C, you have to say the sum of money. So it's the same
Oh, did I miss that?
The same as the sum. No, it just wasn't. Still,
Oh,
it's the same as the.
I get it.
Looks like we have a
Just do with that?
little correction to that.
A little correction.
Okay.
Do I have to read the whole thing again, Mark, or could I just correct the part that I forgot? Okay,
Section C.
so under Section C, it should say, provide for said appropriation by authorizing the town treasurer with the approval of the Select Board to borrow $2,644,833, sum of money pursuant to the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, provided, however, that this appropriation and debt authorization shall be contingent upon passage of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion referendum ballot question under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21, Paragraph C, subsection K.
Again, that's been seconded. Thank you. Any
May I speak to it?
comments?
Okay.
Yep.
So the town, I'm not going to give you all the history in minute detail. If you're really interested, the Harvard Press did a great job in this week's edition, giving every piece of minutiae you'd like to know about the history. But the important history is this. The town bought that land and a building in 1979. It was a purchase. It was initially a vacant building. A few years after that, in the early 80s, a bunch of seniors decided to go play bridge in it and squat. And they played in that building, and then the building was, a few years after that, given to the Old Timers Club at the time, and then it eventually became what we now call it was an informal senior center, and then it became a formal senior center when we hired a first part-time Council on Aging director, which was in 2006. In 2010, we looked at how to make it a handicap accessible building and bring it up to modern code, because while it's a gorgeous building, it doesn't have an elevator, it didn't have ramps at the time. How could you make it more accessible? So we studied that, and we wanted to expand it, do the cost considerations, which went up to about $4.5 million. The project was decided to split it into two phases, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 was making it accessible and regrading the parking lot, expanding the parking lot, making the parking lot mostly level, but we do have a two-tier parking lot up there now. When the second phase came back to town first phase was done in 2016, second phase came back to town in 2017, and the price was about $4.3 million, and at town meeting, it was voted down. So this brings us to today. This article will provide a building that will enable the Council on Aging to meet and expand their programming needs in an excellent location and one that will serve us well for many years. It's going to vastly increase the size of the building and the usable space. And as it is across the country, the fastest growing segment of the population is people over the age of 60. And in Harvard, that's no different. And in Harvard, people over 60, I'm one of them, represents 30% of the town. So it's or about 1,700 individuals. So it's a sizable segment of our population. This proposal that we're voting on today is a third less than we talked about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's giving us expansion plans that we've talked about and really wanted, and giving us a much better location since the buildings level, the parking lots level, the grass around the parking lots level. So there's really a lot that can be done in this building, and it should serve us well for many, many years to come.
Thank you, Steve. Any discussions? Okay, with that, we will move to a vote. This requires 2/3. All in favor? All opposed? This passes by 2/3. Okay, moving on. Article 2, purchase of a new fire truck. Chief Sicard? Stu?
Wow, Mr. Moderator, Stu Sklar, Chair of Select Board, Scott Road. Thank you, everybody, for that vote. Okay, Article 2, to purchase a new fire truck. I move the town, A, authorize the fire chief with the approval of the select board to acquire by purchase a fire truck for the purpose of replacing the 42-year-old aerial truck with an aerial pumper combination vehicle, and appropriate the sum of $965,096 to be expended by the fire chief with the approval of the select board for the acquisition and equipping of such a vehicle for said purpose, and provide for said appropriation by authorizing the town treasurer with the approval of the select board to borrow $965,096 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, provided, however, that this appropriation and debt authorization shall be contingent upon passage of a Prop 2.5 debt exclusion referendum ballot question under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, subsection 21C, subparagraph K.
Been seconded?
Thank
Been
you.
seconded?
Okay, so we've owned aerial truck, I believe, for 6 years that we bought used, and because that we own that truck that is now 43 years old, FEMA is running a grant program whereby they want to get trucks, fire trucks that are over 40 years old off the road. So thanks to the hard work of our fire chief, Chief Sicard, he applied 2 years in a row for this grant. This year the grant was granted to the tune of $763,000. So what you see, yes. The number you see in the warrant is the remainder that needs to be borrowed to pay for the truck. The chief could speak to this, but I believe fire trucks have gone up about 10% in the last 3 months.
This year alone.
This year alone. So it's something, there's a lot to a fire truck. It actually takes about 2 years to get it once we decide to move forward with it. So we're hoping, because of the large grant we're getting to help defray the costs, that town meeting will approve it. What this also does is it helps our capital budget going out. You know, we always split in the town operating and capital items. By buying this truck today, by approving this today, a truck we were going to buy in fiscal 26, we're not going to be buying at all, and it moves off a fire truck capital purchase to sometime in the 30s. So it really is a fiscally prudent idea and gives us a lot of flexibility going forward. And if there are questions as to the program, or can I just have the chief speak to that? No? To the program, how it will be used?
If questions come up, let's.
Okay.
We got a lot going on.
All right. That's what I had to say right now.
Okay. Any discussion? This requires 2/3 vote. All those in favor? Oops, sorry. Hands down, I missed Billy.
Remove my mask? Well, too late. Billy Salter, Elm Street. As a bit of background, my house burned down 25 years ago, and Harvard Fire Department was fabulous. I think they're great, and it's wonderful. That having been said, I'm sure we need a new truck. This truck costs 80 times as much as the old, used, beat up, but somehow still functional truck that we're getting rid of. That suggests that there's a very diverse market for fire trucks. I wonder, and I don't know the answer, if there might be a swell truck that's a little less upmarket than this one, although a whole lot more than $20,000 to get. Thank you.
No question, or can I make a comment?
There was no question.
Okay.
We're okay.
And Mr. Moderator, I have an explicit question for Chief Sicard, several. Are there trucks that might well suit our needs although not as expensive as this one? And is the process of evaluating fire trucks still ongoing? Thank you.
Chief Sicard, do you want to answer that?
Sure, that there is a used fire truck market out there. However, this FEMA grant that we got is only eligible for brand new purchases. So if we go the used truck route, we won't be able to accept the grant. The other disadvantage of going with the used market is you take a chance. A lot of times you're purchasing someone else's problems. Every 5 years, NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, comes up with new safety standards for all equipment, and the trucks are no different. So every 5 years, there's new safety standards that come out on the trucks, and that's what the problem is. It's like with our truck, it's 42 years old. That's several NFPA cycles that we have gone through for safety standards that have been upgraded. For instance, our current one has an open cab. Some firefighters have been injured and killed falling out of the back of there because it's open. Now the NFPA standard has to be a completely enclosed cab.
If you're going to talk, please come to the mic. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like you to thank Chief Sicard on my behalf for his answer. And if you could, would you ask him if there are less expensive new trucks that might work for us? I don't know anything about fire trucks, and he knows a lot. I'm just wondering why we need to be at the tippy top of the market for new trucks.
Understood.
Thank you.
You want to talk about the pricing of trucks?
Sure, the pricing of trucks, and I'm a taxpayer too, and it is so hard to swallow every year of how much the cost of fire equipment has been going up. This year alone was 10%. They're forecasting next year another 10%. Our SCBAs, we're looking for SCBAs, those have gone up 20% this year. It's astronomical. This program is to buy a brand new truck. With this truck though, we're getting 2 for 1. We're getting an aerial device and we're also getting a pumper all in one. This is changing a little bit of the philosophy of how we operate as a fire department. One of the biggest challenges we have in Harvard is the narrow roads, steep driveways, curvy driveways. If we don't get an aerial device into the scene first, we're probably never going to use one at the fire scene. So this truck will now be the first run piece to any possible structure fire. So it enables us to do any kind of rescues, any ventilation as safely as possible for all the firefighters, but also for you guys, the citizens, that we're able to do our job as efficiently as quickly as possible.
Chief, can you answer the question around pricing of trucks? Where does this price fall in reference to new trucks?
But the pricing of the trucks, the pricing is why it's so expensive is because you're getting 2 for 1. There's a wide range of pricing. Right now, we don't have a full, we haven't decided on exactly which manufacturer we are going with. We haven't narrowed down. We're still evaluating that. But it's a new truck, that's basically how much they cost. And it's really painful, and I get that.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Mark Savigny from Shaker Road. I wanted to ask a clarification, make sure I understood correctly. Capital planning, plans for capital purchases. When is the next purchase for a piece of fire apparatus?
So what is the current plan versus what does this do to the current plan?
What the plan before we got this grant was 1.4 million next fiscal year, and then the year after that was upwards of 800,000 for a new engine. With this, we're going to get both of those in one vehicle. That 2025 purchase is being pushed out to 2031.
Thank you.
Libby Levison, Old Shirley Road. Without specifics, I would imagine that Harvard, having no buildings over 4 stories tall, the aerial truck you're looking for might be smaller than what a city fire department might be looking for that could reach 5 or 6 stories. So without committing anybody to anything, is there you know, is there a shorter aerial truck that you are naturally looking at?
We are evaluating.
I'm
different
sorry,
ways.
that was directed to Mr. Moderator, who will now relay that to the fire chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby. Can you talk about the size of the trucks?
Correct. Right now, we have a 75-foot aerial truck. The biggest misnomer about aerial trucks is height. Yes, we like to get up high with the aerial trucks, but more importantly is reach. A lot of our driveways are set far away from the house, and for us, in order to get to the house, even if it's only 2 stories up, we need a long reach to do that. Think about our winters, snowbanks. People who don't shovel their front walkways. We would have to dredge ground ladders through all that snow to do a rescue. With this aerial device with the long reach, we can get a lot more percentage of the households and get to their roofs and second stories with that reach.
Thank you. Any other questions? This requires 2/3. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes with 2/3. Support. Article 3, amending the Chapter 125, the protective bylaw.
Hi, Stacia Donahue, Old Littleton Road, Planning Board.
Close to the mic, please.
Closer, okay.
Say your name and address again, please.
Stacia Donahue, Old Littleton Road, Planning Board. I move that the town amend Chapter 125 of the Town Code, the protective bylaw, by deleting therefrom Section 125-18.2, affordable accessory apartment, in its entirety.
That's been seconded.
All right, Section 125-18.2 was added by Planning Board in the spring of 2012 with the support of Harvard's Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. There was supposed to be a state program that would help support affordable accessory apartments as described in this bylaw. Unfortunately, the state program did not move forward as they had hoped. This section has remained on our bylaws since 2012, unused. We request the removal of this bylaw so that when new affordable housing bylaws are written, there will not be conflicting information already in our bylaws.
Any discussion? This requires 2/3. All in favor? All opposed? This passes by 2/3.
Thank you.
Article 4, amending the Chapter 125-21 permitted use in an AR districts of the protective bylaw.
And Stacia Donahue, Old Littleton Road, Planning Board. I move that the town amend the protective bylaw, Chapter 125-21 of the Town Code, permitted uses in AR districts by making the revisions thereto as printed on page 2 of the warrant for the 2021 Town of Harvard Annual Town Meeting, second session. And
Seconded, anyone? It's been seconded.
thank you. This simple change removes outdated language of in-law apartment for the correct term, which is now accessory dwelling unit.
Any discussion? This requires 2/3. All in favor? All opposed?
Thank you.
This passes by 2/3. You're welcome. Thank you. Article 5, amend Chapter 125-57, Senior Residential Development of the Protective Bylaw.
Good afternoon, Richard Cabellis, Pinnacle Road, member of the Planning Board. I move that the town amend the Protective Bylaw, Chapter 125-57 of the Town Code, Senior Residential Development, by making the following revisions thereto as printed on page 2 through 13 of the warrant for the 2021 Town of Harvard Annual Town Meeting, second session.
It's been seconded.
Okay, thank you. So this article seeks to refine Chapter 12557, the protective bylaw that the town just adopted this past May. I hope the wind cooperates with me. This article allows by special permit only continuing care retirement communities, or CCRCs, in the C district only, and move the current assisted living language already in existence in Chapter 125-52 over to this chapter as a mere housekeeping matter. There is a need for current Harvard residents seeking to downsize and be able to remain in Harvard. This amendment seeks to hear that call and meet that need. A CCRC, for those who are not familiar with that acronym or such a development, is a development comprised of a dwelling or dwellings operated by an organization to serve the evolving needs of persons 55 years or older as they get older and need additional services. A CCRC is there to provide, ranging from just almost independent living all the way through up and until hospice care. CCRCs under this bylaw with more than 10 dwelling units must provide for affordable housing units as well to help meet our 40B percentage cap in town. And it also has provisions, CCRCs, the bylaw calls for no more than 2 access controlled entrances to help ease traffic within the C district. And CCRCs, it maxes out at 50 to 120 units in its entirety, and the development would have 40 to 50% open space. We believe that this meets the needs of the growing elder population in town. There's been a need for that, and we ask that this bylaw be adopted by 2/3 vote, and I'll be happy to answer any more questions that anybody might have.
Questions? Discussion?
Jack Whalen, 389 Still River Road. My question is, does this mean that the town cannot consider or build any standalone assisted livings? It's only CCRCs that we could have in town?
No, it's not only CCRCs. You can also have and retain, excuse me, other independent dwelling units. So it's not just CCRCs. You can have independent dwelling units that we already have on our bylaw. Those remain intact for people ages 55 and older. So that remains. CCRCs are just another alternative that we believe meet the needs of the population here in town.
Okay, so this just adds that.
It just adds that opportunity in the C district. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right.
Nothing else is removed.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Microphone's over here. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul Green, Old Littleton Road. I just want to say that I enthusiastically and strongly support this article. My family, my mom and my dad lived for, my mom for 18 years, my father for several years, in a CCRC in Illinois, and it was exactly what they needed. It was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm delighted to see that we are permitting or propose to permit such a facility here in town. I may need it myself pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Next.
Melissa Martini, Air Road. I would just like to make a comment that this being in the commercial district, as well as our new senior center that we just voted on, would make it a really great sort of area of living where seniors could walk to the senior center from this assisted living if there are pathways built and such. So I just want to support that.
Thank you. With no further discussion, this requires 2/3 vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes, this passes with 2/3. Article 6, amend the chapter 125-52 Air Road Village Special Permit of the Protective Bylaw.
Good afternoon again. Richard Cabellis of Pinnacle Road, member of the Planning Board. I move the town amend the Protective Bylaw, Chapter 125-52 of the Town Code, Ayer Road Village Special Permit, by deleting sections therefrom, sections 125-52, Assisted Living Facility.
It's been seconded.
Okay, so this article merely seeks to amend Chapter 12552, Ayer Road Village Special Permit with the adoption of Article 5 that the town just passed. This language herein, specifically 125-52I, is now redundant and superfluous, having now been just incorporated into 125-57, and thus should be struck in its entirety, and that's why the planning board so moves.
Any discussion? Oh, this has been seconded? Yeah. Thought I heard that. Any discussion? Okay, this requires 2/3. All in favor? All opposed? This passes with 2/3. Article 7, amending the Chapter 125-2, definitions of the protective bylaw.
Good afternoon again, Richard Cabellis of Pinnacle Road, member of the Planning Board. I motion the town to amend the protective bylaw, Chapter 125-2 of the Town Code, definitions by making the revisions thereto as printed on pages 14 through 16 of the warrant article for the 2021 Town of Harvard Annual Town Meeting, second session.
Hold on. Has this been it's been seconded?
Okay. So Article 7, this seeks to amend Chapter 125-2, definitions of the protected bylaw. As the town has just passed Article 5, this is a definition section that will give Article 5 clear context and definitions so that it can be incorporated clearly and correctly and coherently. It defines a CCRC, which I previously defined, that was adopted in Article 5, and it defines assisted living not as a facility, but as a standalone unit as the town just previously adopted. Everything else here is inoperative unless already in effect someplace else. So it just gives CCRC's definition and also strikes facility from assisted living. It will now just be assisted living because it can be an independent unit as per a previous resident's comment that will remain intact.
Thank you. Any discussion? This requires 2/3. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes with 2/3.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Article 8, amend the protective bylaw, Chapter 125.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm back. Stacia Donahue, Old Littleton Road, Planning Board. I move that the town amend the protective bylaw, Chapter 125 of the Town Code by adding thereto a new section 125-58 entitled Erosion Control as printed on pages 16 through 20 of the warrant for the 2021 Town of Harvard Annual Town Meeting, second session, with the following minor changes on pages 18 and 19. Amend 125-58E, Section 1 and Section 3 from the Section B to Section C.
That's been seconded. Discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the minor amendment at the end there, one of our awesome back checkers caught that we had a reference to Section C. It should be from Section B to Section C. So we had said B, it needs to be C in those two little parts. This will be our town's third attempt to adopt an erosion control bylaw per our 2016 Town Master Plan. We have listened and revised per the input of the land use boards and the townspeople. This third version has the support of the Ag Commission, Conservation Commission, Climate Resiliency Working Group, the Board of Health, and the Bear Hill Watershed Management Commission. We believe it to be fair and justifiable bylaw that will help protect our shared natural resources.
Any discussion? It's already been seconded. Come to the mic.
Rachel Cope, Littleton County Road. I apologize for myself, but maybe for others in the room who are newer to this whole article.
Yep.
What does it mean practically in terms of, individual property owners? You know, is there a kind of normal and timely process for, you know, having the evaluation done, et cetera? That's my only question.
Want to answer that?
Basically, our rule of thumb is if you are hiring out work in your yard for maintenance, you're probably going to fall into the minor or major, and that's when you should look at it. If it's a project you're doing over the weekend yourself, you probably are not going to fall in the range. It was definitely one of the things that after version 2 failed that we looked hard at. So we don't want to prevent anyone from doing maintenance in their yard. Those big weekend projects, you're probably going to be fine. But if you're hiring out to like level for an ice hockey rink in your backyard or a big new patio or a new driveway, then you probably are going to fall within the range. But our land use boards, not land use boards, our town conservation agent is, door's always open. She's willing to help you if you have a question.
Thank you. Any additional questions or discussion? With that, it's a 2/3 vote. All in favor? All opposed? This passes by 2/3.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Article 9, amending the Scenic Roads Bylaw, Chapter 90.
Richard Cabellis, Pinnacle Road, member of the Planning Board. I move that the town amend the Scenic Roads Bylaws, Chapter 90 of the Town Code by making the revisions thereto as printed on pages 20 through 26 of the warrant for the 2021 Town of Harvard Annual Town Meeting Second Session.
It's been seconded.
Okay, thank you. This seeks to amend the Scenic Roads Bylaw, Chapter 90, which is currently on the books. I believe we have 48 scenic roads designated in the town of Harvard. The amendments here too really seek to just bring our Scenic Roads Bylaw more in conformity with other towns and communities around the Commonwealth. It seeks to increase the diameter of trees which come under the bylaw from 1.5 to 4 inches in trunk diameter. That is standard in most towns and avoids unnecessary hearings for small trees and overburdensome to property owners, and focuses more on stately trees. It has the backing of the tree warden. It incorporates design standards for scenic roads applications, and that they should be minimally invasive and not rigidly enforced, but consulting with the planning board. It also updates the enforcement provisions and who will be deemed an enforcement officer in the definition section of the bylaw, which should be the tree warden, the police chief or his designee, the select board, and the planning board as to who can enforce a violation of a scenic road bylaw on the record. And it increases the fine for such a violation from $100 to $300, and that is standard with most towns and communities in the Commonwealth. And the enforcement provision was really pulled right from what was recommended from the Attorney General's office. So we believe that these bylaws will help property owners with more clarity and be less intrusive to them, with increasing the diameter of the trees to 4 inches that come under our jurisdiction, and also clarify and bring into conformity our enforcement provisions. And Planning Board asks that you adopt this bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Question? Comment?
Yeah, Brad Bessie, Westcott Road. I'm sure it's been this way all along, but I noticed that town projects are excluded from these guidelines. And that's a concern just because I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was on Littleton County Road, where there was an attempt to straighten the road and about 3 or 4 large 150-year-old oak trees were tagged for cutting down. And thanks to grassroots efforts of residents, we were able to save those trees. I would like to make a motion to amend the article to specifically include town projects to be covered.
So you're offering to make a friendly amendment to this?
I'll make a friendly amendment, sure. But if not, I'm going to make a regular amendment.
Just trying to help guide that along. Is the planning board open to that?
May I consult my members? Thank you.
Why don't you go consult? Brad, you want to just write it down so that save a little time. To incorporate town projects.
The planning board accepts that amendment, friendly or otherwise, as proffered.
Okay, hold on. So we're gonna hold for a second because we need to get the language on that, and that is to include town, do you know what section that is?
I have to, don't have the whole thing in front of me. You know what section that is?
I'm looking. Yep. Hold on just a minute. I need to find the exact language on where we will be amending that.
There is language in here of that effect. Yes, but I only have to look at that.
Yep, you absolutely can. Right there.
So he's trying to delete it.
Yep.
We found it.
Yeah, that's what
It's in-
Kara
it's in,
found.
C4.
Right, that's the only place that
So he
exists.
has to say, I want to delete it.
Yeah, he has to remake his
In order for his motion
Yep,
to be...
yep. Brad?
And then, of course, has to be, the amendment has to be voted. Did you say it was a friendly amendment?
It was a friendly amendment,
Okay.
so it doesn't have to be voted, right?
Sorry, we had to find the right section in the, all right, so I have to officially get this on record. I move to make a friendly amendment
I'll give it to you.
to strike, what is this? Section C, subsection 4, on tree replacements, to strike the section that says this section shall not apply to projects undertaken by the town of Harvard. Friendly amendment on that.
And that's a friendly amendment, which means the planning board's accepted it, so we will add that when we vote.
Okay.
Okay, additional discussion.
Kara Minar, 204 Still River Road. Regarding this article, I wondered under section B, a scenic road consent is not required for the temporary removal and replacement of a stone wall at the same location with the same materials, but only if the Harvard Department of Public Works shall be notified as opposed to is, because otherwise there's no forcing function for it to be actually notified. So I offer that as a friendly amendment.
To move the word from shall
From is notified to shall be
to
notified.
shall be notified. Planning board?
May I consult?
You may consult.
Under the Article 9, Section B.
Carl, you want to say in the mic again for everybody where that is?
Sure. Under Article 9, Section B, it reads currently, a scenic road consent is not required for the temporary removal and replacement of a stone wall at the same location with the same materials, but only if the Harvard Department of Public Works shall be notified before the work begins so they can confirm that the wall is properly replaced. So the forcing function is the shall be versus is notified.
That is accepted as a friendly amendment as well.
Thank you. One other quick thing. On the definitions part here, it says temporary, and I wondered if the planning board had a sense of what was temporary regarding the stone wall removal and replacement. Is there a time frame? Is it a year?
We don't have any sort of real temporal proximity as to when something should be completed. That's no definitive language in that bylaw. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that if you're removing and replacing for whatever reason, that temporary doesn't turn into 10 years.
Right. I don't know I think there might be a 2-year, if we grant permission to remove a stone wall. I think the action has to be completed within 2 years, if my recollection serves.
I'm not certain about that. I'm just wondering, shall we put that in there in the temporary definition, which follows? I think it says temporary of removal of stone walls. Under the next page, the temporary removal and replacement at the same location with the same materials completing within 2 years, or something like that. A friendly amendment?
Yeah.
You may.
With completion of 2 years.
Carl, will you come here, please? I need those written as friendly amendments. So yes,
that's fine.
2 years will be considered. Carl, you're in agreement with that? Yes. 2 years. Okay, so those are accepted both as friendly amendments. Okay, duly noted. I'm sorry, Billy was up first. Go ahead, Billy.
Billy Salter, Elm Street. Maybe this is a point of information. Why does Article 9 require a majority while Article 8 required 2/3? Thank you.
General bylaws require majority except for historic district bylaws. Those are 2/3. And then zoning is 2/3. So that's the difference. Thank you.
Phyllis Clausen, Tohoto Trail. Could you please remind me how many feet from either the center or the edge of the road the right-of-way extends?
Sure. So what's the distance from the road, center of the road?
Yeah, I don't believe the bylaw has a specific distance, and it varies.
It varies. Mm-hmm. So there is no set specific distance.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Moderator, Jay Waldron, Warren Avenue. I would just like a point of clarification. So this Article C, tree replacement, is where D, the section shall not apply to projects undertaken by the town of Harvard. So doesn't D just apply to Section C, tree replacement, and not the complete Article 9?
I mean, that's a matter of interpretation, obviously. I would believe that would be correct. So I believe that would be correct. That's a matter of interpretation, but that is where that language is under that subsection. So I believe it would only, if it is amended, that would only apply to that subsection. That would be my understanding of a plain meaning of that language.
So wouldn't that mean that the amendment, I think the amendment was
The amendment was around trees, specifically the larger trees on the road that was being straightened.
correct? So it sounds like the amendment, if that's just for removing trees, that might not be necessary to have the amendment, but maybe it's good to have it for clarification.
The only place in the article that talks about the town not having to go through it is on the trees.
Is under C.
Under C, which
tree
means
replacement.
anything else that the town would do would have to get approval for, because
So I'm
that's the
a
only
little confused what the amendment is actually asking. Is the amendment asking that
the
the
town,
town be required to replace trees?
that the town has to go through the same, if they're doing a project.
They don't get an exemption.
They don't get an exemption.
Under that
They have to
subsection.
go through the same routine as the rest of us.
Like everybody else.
Including, I mean, a tree replacement. That
Yes.
really only applies to tree replacement.
Correct. Because everywhere else, they already do have to
Okay.
come through us.
Great, thank
Correct.
you, thank you.
They're treated like us.
Hi, Rachel Schmoyer from Stowe Road. I understand the tree part of the amendment, but could you please further explain the stone wall and how the amendment affects stone walls going forward, other than the friendly amendment of the 2 years that was just made? How does this affect current stone walls and them being fixed, repaired,
Right.
versus what stands now?
Right. If you read the language closely, I don't have it in front of me, but it really seeks to incorporate best practices. There's nothing real mandatory there as far as removing of a stone wall. It needs to be, you try to reuse the stones. If you're going to remove stones to open up a driveway, the stones that you'll remove, you're going to try to reincorporate into the existing wall or taper it into the driveway in a manner that is acceptable to the planning board, and we believe that incorporates best practices. But if you read the language there's nothing that is specifically explicit and mandatory other than the incorporation of really best practices as far as in maintaining the integrity of the wall and the harmony of the street. So it's just sort of working together, so to speak.
Thank you.
Libby Levison, Old Shirley Road. Mr. Moderator, exactly to the point that we are currently discussing. I support this. I see where you're going with it, but I am concerned that it's not clear enough. So specifically, when we talk about reconstructing portions of stone walls, you're saying, well, you've got to incorporate the old stone. You're not saying anything about you've got to, the resulting wall has to be more than 13% old stone and less than 87% cement. And I know of stone walls around town that have been taken down and rebuilt with cement that don't look like the traditional stone walls that I believe you intend to try to keep on the sides of our roads. So I would ask the planning board to consider evaluating that language, possibly right now, to say, you know, you want to honor the old practices of, you want the stone walls to resemble the existing stone walls, to not be visually different because so much other material is being used. Thank you for that consideration.
Thank you.
May I respond to that?
You may respond to that.
And I'm just sort of, as a response to that, just to reiterate my prior point and the board's prior point. I mean, your point is well taken, but there are 48 scenic roads in the town of Harvard. Each road, stone walls have been over the years adapted and formed, and some are higher than others. I mean, I think if we would be so explicit when we're taking into 48 scenic roads over the course of hundreds of years, I can't see how that, you know, I think we'd run into some trouble there. I think that if we just incorporate best practices, take each scenic road on an individual basis, each wall on an individual basis, do the best we can to maintain its integrity and to reuse the existing stones, because one property up the street is going to be a little bit different than the other over time, and so I think that would run into, the point's well taken, but I think it would lead to, it would be problematic on an individual basis.
Something new to add?
Chris Ryan, Director of Community and Economic Development.
I just want to bring your attention to subsection 3, where it says that reconstructed portions of stone walls shall use materials that match the existing wall, not approximate, that match. So I think that should be clear enough in terms of making sure that the walls will resemble what the existing wall was.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Ruth Ann Powderly Baccoon, Still River Road, 310 Still River Road. As far as the names of the streets that are listed here, some of them are known by roads and their streets, and some are streets and their roads, but particularly Whitney Lane. Whitney Lane, I believe, was made a private driveway for the Berwing family a number of years ago through town meeting.
So you're asking?
That should, according to my recollection, it's not a town public way.
So you're saying Whitney Lane should not be on here?
Whitney Lane should not be on there.
I mean, if I may, and maybe you can help me, town council, but if that is correct, and I'll take you at your word, obviously, it would be exempt anyway, because I think we'd only have jurisdiction over a public way. So
is it
would
possible to check that fact before this becomes?
Well, Mr. Ryan just told me that your assertion's correct, but I would, again, it's unenforceable anyway. I mean, am I correct, town council, on that?
Yes, but we need to research. Okay. If Whitley Lane is truly a private road, it would be outside of this, but we do not have the resources at this moment to verify that.
Just
So
hoping to protect the...
Yep, it would be outside the jurisdiction, though, if that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next question?
Yeah, hi, I'm a new resident, David Voyer from Air Road, and I've loved Harvard since, I've seen it. I've been here almost 40 years in the state, Mass, New Hampshire, Connecticut, whatever. The point is, I agree with the last woman that spoke. I don't remember her name, but, it's historical significance. And if the town goes and rips apart all this history, what happens? We lose it. It's gone forever. So maybe, maybe you should think about not destroying, historical areas, stone walls and properties and whatever. That's my point.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
I'd seriously consider it.
Thank you.
Tim Schmoyer, Stowe Road. I find this problematic, and I found it problematic on the planning board as well, and for the same reasons that Livia said. We're actually going through the process of rebuilding our front stone wall. Prior to doing that, I got approval from the land agent that it was outside of the distance from the road that would fall under the planning board or the town's purview. That was most of our stone wall. There is a part of the stone wall that is under the purview. It is ambiguous to me that I have to rebuild it with the same stones in the same places, in the same, construction that it was before, because when we bought the house, it had completely fallen down, right, as a stone wall. It was just a mound of stones. So I plan to build it up as a nice stone wall. I'm not going to replace the mound of stones. I don't think this provides any clarity to somebody who's actually trying to do this. If you're going to do this, either make it the bylaw where you have to work with the planning board and come to a consensus and leave out any of the details like within 2 years or same stone or that kind of stuff. Just enforce it as part of your process. Or make it very specific and doable and get a professional in who does stone walls and help you write this properly for reconstructing a stone wall, not just what the town thinks it likes to see when it drives down the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Schmidt, 290 Stowe Road. I just want to talk about the stone walls. So if you look at the stone wall up there, that was redone. And when we redid it from Park and Rec, we added the granite to sit on there. We replaced concrete that was added in 1933. So I'm also concerned of the language that you're putting in here, that you have to use the same materials. We added some materials, but we've made that a better, I think it's a better looking wall than what was up there before. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Mostello, East Bear Hill Road. Just a question here. So I'm looking at section 96, section D on the fines and violations. And it says violators shall be subject to a fine of $300 as set forth under, etc. Each day that a violation continues shall constitute a separate offense. So does that mean that it's a $300 a day violation?
That's correct, yes, but that's very common language that is throughout towns and cities throughout the Commonwealth. I mean, I don't think it's in anyone's interest to enforce a $300 a day fine against any individual in this town. I certainly don't want to see that happen. And that just is going to encourage people to abide by the bylaw. I mean, it's not mandatory that that's enforced. It's that it may be enforced. But that's a general provision that comes directly from the Mass Attorney General's office that we incorporated that numerous towns have, and it's throughout numerous bylaws.
Okay.
You know, commonly, it's every day.
Okay, as a practical, just how this would play out normally. So if somebody did, I don't know, try to reconstruct a wall in violation or something like that, I mean, would the fine apply while you're trying to work it out with the board? I mean, if there's a miscommunication, I mean, how would it work out in practice?
I mean, I can't speak for the entire board. I would hope that we could just work it out amicably without anybody having to pay anything, and it would just encourage people to sort of say, hey, what can I do to make myself in compliance? And that's all really we want.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Looks like there's no further discussion, so with those two friendly amendments that were added, three, I'm sorry, Cara had two in there, yes. So with the three friendly amendments added, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes by majority. Excuse me? I said it passed by majority, sir. Article 10, adopt MGL Chapter 90, Section 17C, the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit in thickly settled areas or business districts.
I move that the town accept the provisions of Chapter 90, Section 17C of the Massachusetts General Laws, which will allow the Select Board to set the speed limit in thickly settled and business district areas of the town at 25 miles per hour.
It's been seconded.
This is to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Chapter 90, Section 17C of the Massachusetts General Laws, which will allow the Select Board, you see the idea there. The idea, thickly settled is constituted by houses being less than 200 feet apart over a quarter-mile distance. And that would permit, that's a common provision, and permits that 25 miles an hour is the speed limit in that section. So, for example, on Still River Road between Prospect Hill Road and West Bear Hill, that would be a 25 mile per hour section, particularly where those homes are close to the road and also to improve pedestrian safety and bicycle safety and so forth. And so this only provides where the districts are less, the houses are less than 200 feet apart over a quarter of a mile. And that's through GIS data.
Discussion.
Ben Guthrow, Fairbanks Street. We already have some 25-mile-an-hour zones in town. This isn't so much a problem of definition, but a problem of enforcement, and I wonder how this will help with that.
I hope that it provides some clarity and some uniformity as we get through and try to rationalize some of the speed limits. Additionally, you may have seen it in other towns like Air and Concord. They have it, they'll say the posted speed limit in this town is 25 miles per hour unless otherwise noted. So you need to have other speed limit signs in town saying, well, now this is going to be a 35 mile an hour section. But generally speaking, I hope it will provide some uniformity. I also think that we have in our working with Acting Chief Babu, a greater commitment currently to greater visibility from the police and greater enforcement. And that's what we're hoping to go forward with in the future as well. But I hear your point. I mean, you can post speed limit signs, but unless there's some active enforcement. The other piece of that is in combo plate with that active enforcement is if you see on 111 in Boxborough where you're always sort of very conscious of where Police are usually stationed right past 495 there.
Is there something you want to share?
Yeah, no, you just tiptoe through that area because you know they're there. So hopefully between posting and enforcement, people will self-monitor their speed. That's perhaps a more altruistic goal.
Changes are, I mean, with the home rule, it changes things from state mandated to town mandated when we're already not enforcing the existing I mean, on Fairbanks Street, we have a stop sign, and people come down the road at 55 miles an hour and screech to stop at the stop sign. It's a 25-mile-an-hour zone. So, I mean, we already have laws on the books that we're not enforcing.
Understood.
Why don't we start with that rather than trying to change laws that are not going to do anything?
Can I comment to that or no?
Nope.
Okay, got it.
Jay Waldron, Warren Avenue. I completely agree with the gentleman who was just speaking. Really, what is changing the speeds on some of these roads going to do if it's not currently enforced? Is it going to be enforced more now? And also, there was some discussion, I believe, of certain sections would be 25 and maybe some would be 30. It just seems like we're going to have a whole bunch of different signs that we need to add more than we have now. Certain sections might be 25. If there's a curve, it might be 25, and then when it's straight, it changes to 30. We have a lot of curvy roads here, so I'm just thinking there's just going to be a dearth of signs all over the place, there are going to be just tons of signs all over the place for speed limits, and when you're traveling at a certain speed and all of a sudden it changes, you slam your brakes on to go from 35 to 25.
So this article,
it just seems a little impractical to me and unnecessary.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say that? Okay.
Hi, Jessica Boschman, Littleton Road. I'm in favor of having speed limits around the common in particular. My 8-year-old daughter during COVID learned how to ride her bicycle, and I worry all the time when she's going to see her friend on Old Littleton Road that she might get hit. And so people have just been speeding coming from Littleton Road up to the common and even around the corner there. So, and I agree with Ben Guthrow, what he said about enforcement. I think those things have to go hand in hand.
Thank you.
Jenny Camardo, Still River Road. First of all, I'd like to thank whoever went ahead and put the 20-mile-per-hour school zone down on Still River Road already. I sincerely appreciate that. My children walk to school on that road, and it's a little scary. We've got them all suited up in vests and everything, but I do think the speed limits do need to be lower. However, I don't see the enforcement. And when every week I look in the Harvard Press and I see that there have been 0 traffic stops, 2 traffic stops, even 7 traffic stops, the presence isn't there. So we can spend the money for all the signage. I don't know how much that's going to cost. We can clutter up some of the wonderful scenic byways that we love with traffic signs, but until we have the enforcement, it's not going to happen. People are not going to self-enforce these speed limits. So I ask that we have a plan in place if you are going to spend the money and and kind of the visual clutter to add all of these speed limit signs, that we do have the enforcement to back it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Billy, I think Paul was first. Okay, Billy.
Billy Salter, Elm Street. I agree about enforcement, and I wonder if the committee might be willing to accept an amendment. I don't quite, very friendly. I don't quite have the wording, but that would express the opinion of the town that the speed limit should be more vigorously enforced. I understand that would have no official snap, but it would convey the town's opinion. And I propose something like that as a friendly amendment.
You want
Okay.
to talk about that with your group
Sure.
about a friendly amendment to? Nope, here it is. Hey. Yep.
I'm back from the huddle.
No, I'm talking about Article.
So,
I hope.
Billy, you're asking for a friendly amendment to direct the enforcement of speed limits in town.
Correct.
Okay, and you're committed?
This is actually just the adoption of Mass General Law, so this is not an appropriate place to do that. However, the Select Board is committed to ensuring that greater enforcement takes place. And even at this time, Acting Chief Babu has pushed up patrols to more than 4 hours per day. And so you might actually have seen more visibility and more enforcement as in the last couple of months. But we are committed as a board to continue to ensure that this is complemented by enforcement, because it's absolutely correct that without enforcement, the signs are meaningless. And this only applies to the areas in this particular of the thickly settled or business districts. The other roads, it will come up in the next amendment. But I will say this, if the road has no sign and is not posted, the default speed limit would be 40 miles per hour. That's right. So it does, and we've actually had incidences where there was an enforcement issue and the case was thrown out because the person found out that it wasn't posted. And so even though they were going over what was thought to be the speed limit, the case was thrown out against them. So it's good to have a baseline understanding of the speed limits. And I think this is a start for thickly settled and business districts.
So Billy, since this is a Mass General Law, it sounds like the Select Board is not going to accept that as a friendly amendment. Do you want to withdraw that friendly amendment?
Well, I guess I'd like to ask a question, which is, in some sense, that amendment is orthogonal to Mass General Law, is not coupled to the Mass General Law.
Right.
Which,
so we're voting.
I think you're saying, therefore it doesn't count, it can't be made as a friendly amendment to this here article.
That's correct. It's outside of the jurisdiction of this article.
Okay.
But Select Board has heard very clearly what the town, including yourself, has requested, which is the enforcement.
And as we have seen over many years, when the Select Board really wants to get something done,
they get it. So Billy, you withdraw that? Thank you. Paul?
Paul Morris, Lover's Lane. Those who know Patrick O'Brien's wonderful O'Brien Maturin novels may remember somewhere about 8 books in. There's a little piece about some of the irrationalities in Old English law, and a bit about what a widow needs to do under certain circumstances to remarry. That sounds a really irrational set of things. The point around this is that law is not really a rational endeavor. And speed limits are a place where things really often really do look irrational. And I particularly find this the case in Massachusetts, where I've lived here for many years, I've driven through here for many years. I'm almost never able to understand, except when I got the sign right in front of me, what the speed limit is. And so that brings us from the realm of law, which we're beholden to, even if we're ignorant of it, into the realm of law where we can't really be beholden to it because it is not possible to understand what the law is. And speed limits very much fall into that area for me. And I don't see this kind of measure of posting signs in the boundaries of town saying speed limit 25 unless otherwise posted helps that situation any. The kind of way in which speed limits work in Massachusetts, I don't understand. This wouldn't help me understand, this wouldn't help me figure out. I don't see this helping in any appreciable way, other than what Billy Salter just said.
So Paul,
working with the town to better improve enforcement. Moderator.
So Paul, in reference to that, it will take us out of the situation Cara just mentioned, that currently it's 40 miles an hour if not posted. So at least gives us a foundation as a town to say it's 25 unless posted. So I hear what you're saying about we're not going to put 25 mile an hour speed limits up every 15 feet, but for those of us that live here, those of us under the tent at the moment, would all understand together that it's 25 miles an hour.
But I don't know where it is posted. So I take street I live on, Lover's Lane. What's the speed limit? Coming onto that, I can come through now 3 different posted speed limits. It might be 20, it might be 30, it might be 40. What do I drive? It used to be 4. When Elm Street was 2 ways, there was the last sign you passed said 35 miles an hour. So this comes to this isn't going to help. It's probably going to confuse things more, in my opinion. So I don't support this as not helping the situation.
Okay. Thank you. We'll get there, I'm sure. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Moderator. Margaret Coyle Nestler, Cruff Lane. Very strange microphone. I would just like to suggest that we also think about where the signage would be located. If you drive through Stowe, they have done a really great job there of locating signage actually in the ground plane, in the roadways themselves. The lettering is large, it's impossible not to see it, and yet it's not up in your view as you drive along. I mean, they do have what I guess you'd call standing signs as well, but there's a lot of signage pertaining to speed limits actually in the roadbed and in the ground plane, and I think they do a really great job. And I know there's sort of becoming a proliferation of signage along our roadways that a lot of people are unhappy with. So I just want to suggest that we consider that there are alternate ways of achieving our goals and keeping the rural and bucolic look that we love in town. And I also think that signage in the roadway is very effective with drivers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Nick Browse. I live on Still River Road. I regularly walk on Still River Depot Road. Collectively, they have become the Still River Vehicle Entertainment District in the past 18 months. The neighborhood of Still River, with Cara's help and the Select Board's help, has worked with the police chief, with the representatives of Devon's, with a number of constituencies to try to address speeding problems down there. There is no one answer. We feel this is part of an answer. We feel the next warrant is also part of an answer. Enforcement is part of an answer. We are strongly supportive of this, and we hope it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mike Dursey, 32 Mass Ave. I wanted to make sure that we're still talking about Article 10. Because I was getting confused as well, and I think maybe many people are. We're talking about Article 11. So on Article 10, limiting the speed limits currently at 40 to 25 in in the thickly settled areas, I mean, whether or not this will work is not a reason not to get behind this. I think we should allow the select board to set these limits. I would encourage us to perhaps at a future meeting bring forward ideas for how we think the town should enforce these things. I do, however, have a friendly amendment. This sets the speed limit at 25 miles an hour, and we do have speed limits in town that are less than 25 miles an hour. Notably, some of these roads here, I don't know if we have jurisdiction over this because it's a state road, but I know that there are speed limits less than 25 miles an hour, and I would like to suggest a friendly amendment that we not allow the select board to increase the speed limit above what it's currently set at, if it's already posted at a lower level.
Yep, so that's outside of the scope of the article at the moment.
It is.
Yes.
Okay, so just to confirm, the way I read this, it says it allows the select board to set the speed limit in thickly settled and business district areas of the town at 25 miles an hour. This road right here is 20 miles an hour. So I'm just trying to understand, does voting yes on this allow the select board to set the speed limit of this road at 25?
No, it is, if it's not posted.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So it's unless otherwise posted in a school zone as 20 miles per hour as
It's already
posted
posted.
always is a default position. School zones are 20 miles per hour.
Withdraw the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Fraser, 60 Ayer Road. I just want to step back and applaud the Board of Select people for taking this issue on. I've lived in this town for 10 going on 11 years. I'm the parent of 3 kids. Every single other parent I've spoken to you've heard other parents speak here at the mic today about people speeding in our town. I also heard somebody say earlier, I don't understand, a lot of confusion about why is the speed here or there. That is true. There are some really strange places in town where suddenly the speed limit drops, or sometimes the speed limit seems incredibly too high. I live on Air Road. That's not pertinent to this article. I live on Air Road where the speed limit is 40 and people drive 50 or 55 by my house every single day as I try to get out of my driveway. This is a small town, a beautiful town. This is just a basic common sense approach that says in a thickly settled area where there are children walking, where there are people walking, 40 miles per hour is not appropriate. 25 miles per hour is safe. It's just a simple common sense measure. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out one reason why anyone would not want to add that in the pot in addition to the enforcement. It only helps, it doesn't hurt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Libby?
Libby Levison, Old Shirley Road, and when I moved back to Harvard 11 years ago, there were speed limit signs. I had a 30-mile-an-hour sign on Old Shirley Road. At the beginning of the pandemic, as I started walking daily on Old Shirley Road, I suddenly noticed the speed limit sign was gone. And so I really support the select board in doing this, but I also want to say to, the earlier speakers, we used to have speed limit signs only 5 years ago. We're not talking big, flashy things, right? We're just talking 30 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour. Let's keep the kids safe on Depot Road as they're getting to and from the playing fields. Anyway, so I don't think that the signs are, thank you.
Thank you. With no further,
Lucy Wallace, Orchard Hill, I move the question.
thank you. It's been seconded. Okay. I need to vote on moving the question. This requires 2/3 vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes with 2/3. Now we're voting on Article 10. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes by majority. Article 11, Home Rule Petition Speed Limits.
Sure, there'll be no comments on this one. I lower this a little bit. Thank you. I'm glad we have would help. I move that the town authorize the select board to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to adopt a home rule petition special act to authorize the select board to set the speed limits on the town roads as printed on pages 26 and 27 of the warrant for the 2021 Town of Harvard Annual Town Meeting second session. This is a, thank you.
Seconded. It's been seconded. Go ahead.
So in the interest of promoting the safety of our pedestrians and bicyclists and other types of transportation in town besides the cars, we are looking to lower some of the speed limits in town, also to try to make them a little bit more consistent with some of the speed limits as you're coming into town, like Littleton Road is, I think it's 10 miles less per hour once you get into Littleton, and I'm always worried I'm going to get a ticket. So that is one of the roads that's on the list. Right now, you know, as I think Libby had mentioned, there aren't signs up everywhere. I'm not sure if signs were taken down because they weren't legal signs, but I know that the other method of changing the speed limits on these roads would require a speed study. And if we do a speed study, the speed limit cannot be within a range outside of the 85% of the average speed of the motorist. I think we can all agree that everybody goes much over the speed limit on many of the roads in town, so a speed study trying to change the speeds in that manner might not be what we're looking for. So in lieu of that, we are promoting trying to get this passed, the home rule petition to change the speed limits on the roads as listed. We are hoping to get this passed. I know it doesn't have every road that everybody might be looking for. We will be taking input to potentially do this again in the future. We really want to get this approved by the Mass Department of Transportation. If we vote for this, it goes to the legislature and then it goes to Mass DOT. If we have too extensive of a list, we are worried that it wouldn't get through DOT. So this is a first pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get going, I have a question just to verify, because I'm going to guess some of the questions are going to come.
Yes.
Are you going to take any friendly amendments to add roads to this list now?
No. We
Okay.
discussed that before the,
Okay, so I just want everybody to hear that. The list is as the list is for this first round.
meaning there's no additional streets to be added.
Correct. No additional streets on this first round.
Lonnie Hudorfer, Stowe Road. I'm glad you clarified that. My question was going to be, was it a mistake that Stowe Road was left off of this? It's been my observation that the roads where speeding is the most serious problem are those that lead out of town to some major arterial elsewhere, to some employment center, commuting routes. And I look at this list, and the handful of most important ones might be Air Road from Route 2 to the airline, Bolton Road, Littleton Road, Still River Road, and Stowe Road. Those should be the top priorities. And everything else is sort of secondary on this. So you can do whatever, but I think without that road in there, I don't know, I can't support it. And furthermore, I have a real question of whether going to the state legislature to try to do this in a town it is beautiful and bucolic, but is one of the least dense and has the lowest percentage of commercial industrial businesses in the town, is really what we ought to be trying to do. And maybe ought to start with the enforcement mechanisms people have suggested, and we did take a step for the ones where the residential area through the last amendment was, or the last article, will help in those areas. But on this one, without one of the major roads and the major problems in town, I can't support it.
Did you have a question or?
There was no question.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Mark Spignese, Shaker Road. I sincerely hope not to open up a can of worms.
Go ahead.
I'd like to propose a change. I'd like to suggest that we change Shaker Road 30 miles per hour to Shaker Road 30 miles per hour with 25 miles per hour in the Shaker Village Historic District.
Thank you.
So I think there's...
Our understanding is, do we need to vote on that, whether it's going to be a friendly amendment, or can I reply?
I'd rather you reply first because I think it's been addressed.
Yes, the 25 mile per hour speed limit will apply because it's a dense area. Is it a quarter of a mile? Sorry, Cara has the... That's okay.
Mark, if I understood it, Shaker Village would qualify for the previous article, which is where houses are less than 200 feet apart over a quarter of a mile distance. So I think by default on the GIS data, it would be 25 miles per hour in the center of the village, Shaker Village.
I don't have confidence that without it in the bylaw, I mean, without specifying this in this article, that there could be any, you're saying that because Article 10 passed,
Yes, the previous article, yeah, 10.
then that guarantees that the Shaker Village, which according to my measurements is more than a quarter of a mile with homes less than 200 feet apart, will have a 25 mile an hour speed limit?
Will qualify for that, yes.
It will qualify for it.
Under Article 10 that we just passed.
It will qualify.
The default speed will be that 25 because it's thickly settled.
Okay.
So you,
Okay, I'll tell you what. As a belt and suspenders approach here, we will accept that, yeah.
Yeah.
We will accept that as a friendly amendment for Shaker Village.
Thank you. I won't
Just in case.
I won't need to read any of my justifications. Thank you.
hold on. So for Shaker Village,
South Shaker Road? Shaker Road. If you could clarify, Mark.
So my language is change Shaker Road dash 30 miles per hour to Shaker Road dash 35 miles per hour
30 miles.
with 25 miles per hour in the Shaker Village Historic District. And I have the language written.
So you want to increase the speed from 30 to 35? No, I don't think you, I think you misspoke.
Did I say 35? Yeah. I'm so sorry. I actually wrote 25 and said 35,
Yeah,
so
you did.
I guess we can trust anything I say.
so Shaker Road, 30 miles an hour dash with a 25 mile an hour speed limit in the Shaker Village District.
Historic District, yes.
Okay, can you please come up and write that? I believe it's been accepted as a friendly amendment.
Yes.
So if, or when we get to passing this, that'll come up as that. Brad.
Thank you. Brian Cook, 92 Ann Lee. I would like to make a friendly amendment for Ann Lee as well as Myrick Lane to be at 25 miles an hour. We're one of the largest developments in Harvard with a lot of kids and cars. I understand it's not going to be hard to be enforced, but cars fly down our roads. Also, interestingly enough, we have a 25 mile an hour posted speed limit on Myrick, and like 20 feet later, it turns it into 30, which doesn't make sense at all.
So are you going to accept friendly amendments to those two streets? That would be Ann Lee and Myrick, correct?
Please.
Yes, I wish it was easier to turn left out of Myrick on air, but anyway.
So,
yeah, me too.
Would you please come and write that down as a friendly amendment, which would be Ann Lee and Myrick Lane going to 25 miles an hour?
Thank you. Jared Wollaston, 1 Elm Street.
Can you get closer?
Jared Wollaston, 1 Elm Street. I am concerned that this article does not include portions of Still River, Mass Ave, and Air Road that are in the center of town. I live in the Historic District and have been on the Historic Commission, and the change I would like to do is have that the historic districts both have a speed limit not greater than 20 miles an hour. So that you enter into the Harvard from on Air Road, you don't address this coming into town, or you don't address Still River, which next to me, it goes 40, 50 miles an hour. So I would like a friendly amendment that would add that the historic district of the center of town has speed limits no greater than 20 miles an hour.
Hold on just a moment. We got a little huddle going on. That's where we are today.
These are the roads that are already on here. Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Jared, for your comment. So those roads are, Mass Ave is a state road, and the other roads are falling under the 25, and they are otherwise posted, so no, we won't accept the amendment. So thank you for your...
But not even the historic district to have it as a 20-mile-an-hour zone?
Yeah, if historic district, we'd have to change the streets, and we've already said we're not going to change the streets on the lists. We do have Still River on other portions, and then the existing speed limit right now, I believe
But
it's 25.
the Still River section from the town center where a lot of children go every day, I see them every day crossing there. Some cars are going 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. Are we just going to wait till someone's killed on that
I hope
road?
not.
But, yeah, so you're going to keep it at 25 miles an hour?
There is something called a special safety zone that we had looked at, but we weren't able to get to in time for this town meeting. That could be something that we look at in the future with the Transportation Advisory Committee for that issue.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm going to interject again. I mentioned before we started this is the first phase.
Right.
More are going to come, okay? So I understand what you're saying. This most likely will show up on the next round. Hopefully at the next town meeting, there will be additional roads brought to this list. But the board took their first step by bringing this list of 20, 30 roads here to us.
And will it be clarified how you petition to have those speed limits, those roads included in this?
My own recommendation would be continue to be in contact with the select board asking for that second phase. You want your roads included in that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Rachel Cope, Littleton County Road. I just have a question for clarification. Where there are speed limits listed and roads listed, can we assume that the existing speed limits are higher? Then
Yes.
in essence, we're not increasing any speed limits.
No.
Okay,
we are
good.
not
Thank you very much.
increasing.
That's it.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter Dorward, 78 Still River Road. I'm encouraged that this issue is being addressed, and I commend the town for going after it. I would like to talk about one specific road that is already on the list, which is Still River Road, the area between Still River Road from Prospect Hill to Willow. It's now proposed for 35 miles an hour. Much of this section has guardrails that eliminate shoulders on one or both sides of the road, removing any escape path for pedestrians or bikers. Many people choose to walk, run on the wrong side of the road to have an escape route, but this has its own issues. The Mass DOT procedures for speed zoning identify the lack of adequate rolled shoulders as a condition which warrants lower speed limits. In comparison, Madigan Lane and Turtle Lane intersections are also very dangerous. They're in this section. They have poor sight lines from both roads. In comparison, Mass Ave, where I understand the state sets the speed limits, has a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit from Bolton Road to Woodchuck Hill Road. I believe the housing density, sight lines, and traffic volume of this stretch are similar to that of Still River Road from Prospect Hill to Willow, except that the state deemed it necessary to improve sight lines on the curves some years back, and it has wider shoulders. So rather than going up and down on Still River Road, as somebody has pointed out might be confusing, what I'd like to propose is that we set a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit from West Bear Hill all the way to Willow.
So your request is a friendly amendment?
Yes.
For Still River Road, Bolton Town Line to West Bear Hill, and from Prospect Hill to Willow Road to be 30 miles an hour?
Yes, specifically, I'd like to strike the second line that says Still River Road, Prospect Hill to Willow Road, 35, and substitute Willow Road for Prospect Hill in the third line. So it would read West Bear Hill to Willow Road, 30 miles an hour. And while I'm at it, just real quickly, there's also one typo that needs to be corrected.
Well, let's stay on this first.
Okay.
Okay, so as a friendly amendment,
yes,
you're asking it'd be easier if we just change what's here to 30 miles an hour. I understand you
Yes.
want the whole stretch, but that covers the whole stretch.
Yes, the change I proposed covers the whole stretch.
Okay, so let me ask Select Board if they're open to that.
Should we break it into pieces? Yeah.
I have it written out if that helps.
It will.
So we would accept it for this one.
Let me get their yay or nay.
Okay.
Quick question. At first you asked for just Prospect Hill to Willow to be 30. Are you now requesting that Bolton to West
Not
Bear Hill?
Bolton. No.
Okay, so just the Prospect Hill to Willow section?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes, we will accept that.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
accept that.
And you had another?
A very quick one.
Yeah.
Mill Street is listed as Mill Road. That should be changed as well.
Should be Mill Road.
Should be
Thank
Mill
you.
Road.
Yes, we will
not
accept
street.
that as a friendly amendment. Thanks,
Thank
we
you.
caught that and couldn't change it.
Okay, if you'd please bring that up.
Thanks.
As a friendly amendment. Thank you.
Edith Joyce, Oak Hill Road. For the past 2 decades, my family and I have taken our life in our hands coming out of our driveway. We live near the center of town. We're in the historic district and we're walking distance from school. 30 miles, I appreciate that you're taking this in your hands versus having the state do a traffic study. 30 miles an hour at the bottom of Oak Hill Road is completely ignored. And it's ignored not only by cars, and I apologize, but also by cyclists who really don't pay any attention to the speed limits. And as people here might recall, there was a terrible accident at the bottom of Oak Hill Road with a cyclist hitting a car in June. And we're asking if there's any consideration given to signage for blind driveways, which there are many near the center of town, and as Lincoln has any speed bumps in certain parts of the town.
So I appreciate what you're asking. Those are outside the scope right now. We're talking just about speed limits on roads.
Okay. Could you share what your thoughts are in terms of having cyclists also pay attention to speed limits, and is that going to be part of yours?
It is the law that bicyclists, as anyone, pays attention to all road signs and all. They're supposed to use their hand signals. All that's supposed to be.
And I know people have mentioned that enforcement is a challenge in our town, and hopefully there are ways to increase enforcement, both cars
I agree.
and with cyclists. Thank you.
Speed limit is the speed limit. Thank you.
Thanks.
George Watkins, Shaker Road, and an earlier amendment pretty much covers me, except that north of the Shaker Village Historic District, the road becomes very narrow, very twisty, very windy, and it's crazy to increase the speed limit from 25 to 30. And I would also say it's crazy to increase the speed limit from 25 to 30 on South Shaker Road. Both of those roads are very narrow. They have terrible sight lines.
Yeah, I don't believe that any of the, I thought we had limited it not to cover the ones that were already, with the curves that are already posted. Could you clarify for me on on the street for me on Shaker? Where the 25 you're speaking of, like which?
For the last 3 decades, the entire road has been 25 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Just this morning, I noticed that suddenly the sign disappeared. Do you know where it went?
No, I wish it did, because my
Did the select
understanding
board
was,
authorize it?
I mean, my understanding is that the limits that we were given from the, acting chief would be lower than where the default limits either were because there were no signs, or lower than what is already
There
posted.
has always been 2 signs on Shaker Road
But
saying
for some
25.
reason they just disappeared.
That's right.
So the intent is not to raise speed limits anywhere?
Yeah.
Well, my amendment is
Does anybody
specifically
know
for
about-
Shaker and South Shaker, but, and of course, now we don't know what the speed limit is because they took all the signs down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got some clarification here. They were taken down because they weren't legal signs. Signs had been put up at 25 miles per hour without those speed study requirements and without a home rule petition, and they couldn't issue tickets for those if they weren't done in that manner. So they were taken down because those signs weren't enforceable, unfortunately. So I think, are you asking to amend the 30 to 25? Which is what your
Yes.
understanding is what that was the speed limit before.
We can do it 2 ways. We can amend it so that for South Shaker it's at 25, or amend the prior amendment for the historic district up to the Airtown line.
So you're asking for Shaker Road and South Shaker Road to both be 25 miles an hour?
That's right.
Okay. Is that accepted as a...
Yes, we accept that as a friendly amendment.
Please come up. I'm going to need you to document that. So that is all of Shaker Road is now 25 miles an hour. You wanted South Shaker Road, as well as Shaker Road to the historic district we already had. So you want to go all the way up north now. So let's just make it south. Let's just make it Shaker Road 25. That's what I understand. We asked for Shaker Road. Okay, so let's just go that. This is it. Okay.
Elaine Ritchie, Glenview Drive. I apologize if this is a duplicate question, but I just want to really be clear. We're doing this so we don't have to do speed studies and so we don't have to increase speed anywhere.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ben Guthrie, Fairbank Street. Mr. Moderator, I move the question.
Question has been moved. It's been seconded. 2/3, right? Yep. So the question has been moved. I have to take a vote. All those in favor of moving the question? This is 2/3. All those opposed? This passes by 2/3. So, with the friendly amendments that have been made, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes by majority. Article 12, home rule legislation for an additional off-premise for all alcohol license.
Mr. Moderator, Stu Sklar, Chair of Select Board, Scott Road. I move that the town authorize the Select Board to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to adopt a Home Rule Petition Special Act to authorize the Select Board to issue one additional off-premise all alcoholic beverage license for the town of Harvard.
Has it been seconded? It's been seconded. Discussion.
So liquor's sort of new to the town of Harvard. We've had it for 5 or 6 years, I think. And we have the different designations. So we have 5, when we adopted Mass General Law to sell liquor in the town, we got 5 permits for beer and wine, or beer and malt beverages, I think is the right way to put it. And we got 2 for all alcohol. We didn't really know that because we're not that conversant in it. We had an applicant come to take over the retail space next to Dunkin' Donuts and requested an all alcohol license. We started the process off and we found that we're not entitled to that 3rd license unless we do a home rule petition. So the Select Board felt it fair to the applicant to bring it to town meeting and see if the town would approve it or not. So that's why we're here today to talk about this article.
Thank you. Discussion.
Billy Salter, Elm Street. I think this fails to solve a problem that we don't have. By which I mean, maybe to make that a little clearer, there's no need for a place that sells all kinds of alcohol right next to Dunkin' Donuts. You can get booze a lot of different places. You're going to have to drive to get there anyway, so one can drive out of, slowly admittedly, but out of, on any of the roads leading out of town and find a liquor store. I don't see why we need this. I don't think we should do it, and I will vote no and urge everyone else to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there any other discussion? 3, 2.
Rich Maori, 50 Slough Road, Select Board.
convenience store with liquor was not my first choice of something to go in the C district. I did take a drive. This owner has two other stores, one in the center of Sudbury and one in Southborough. I went to the one in Sudbury. It's not your typical convenience store. It looks, the best I can describe it, as something more akin to what Alltown is. It looks nice. It's inside, externally as well. The liquor would be a small portion of what he intends to sell. In checking with the town of Sudbury, there have been no complaints regarding, and I use Sudbury as an example because of the closest proximity to Harvard in terms of size and scale. There were no complaints about the store. The owner is quite active in the community, making more than 20 donations over the course of a year to local Sudbury charities and organizations. He does the same in Southborough. So I'm not here to convince folks one way or the other on the need of it. I'm just trying to give some context of this person who's coming in and hoping to do this. He very much wants to assimilate himself in the community and be a pillar of the community. So I'm just providing that context.
Thank you. Andrew Mostello, East Bear Hill Road. Just a quick comment. It's nice to have little shops like this that they're proposing in town. Those are hard businesses to run. And if they believe that they'll be able to stay in business better as a result of being able to offer liquor as an additional option in the store, I don't see why we'd want to turn that down and make it harder to keep small businesses like this alive in our town. Yeah, just in general, that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Charles Oliver, Simon Atherton Road. I spoke about this article on Nextdoor Harvard earlier this week. I have a few concerns about this article and the petition to the legislature to convert it to a full license. We've only just recently had a turnover of ownership at the Wine Press. Or no, sorry, the Grapevine. I'm confusing it with another store. And they have so now they are going to get a full license there. This petition to the legislature is us as a town telling the legislature that we have an unmet need for a full liquor license in the town of Harvard. I think that we probably should give the folks who just purchased the Grapevine an opportunity to provide the service to the town. This location would be less than a mile away from the existing store at the Grapevine, and so it's really hard for me to believe that we have an unmet need, at least in this particular area of town, for another full license. The gentleman who is buying the license, or is going to open the store in the old dry cleaner, hasn't done any community outreach to the town of Harvard to indicate how he's going to operate in the town. And I think that first granting him a beer and wine license, a wine and malt beverage license, is a good enough start for him. If he wants to operate in Harvard and become a member of the community, we should allow him to do that. But have him demonstrate his commitment to the community and see what type of neighbor he is before we convert this license into a full license. Once we grant this license, it's an asset that we no longer have control over. And without having a full understanding of the way he operates and what type of store it is going to be, I think that we should not like he's not on a trial basis, but I just think with the other full license coming online very shortly, we should take it slow, give him the opportunity to start his business, show what type of businessman he will be in Harvard, and then go from there. Take up the question at another time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moderator, point of clarification on something that he said?
There wasn't a question.
I know, but he said something that's not exactly accurate.
Okay.
So we grant the liquor license and that person has the license. If they go to transfer it in the future, we actually have jurisdiction over that. When the Grapevine changed ownership, the new owner had to come to the select board to get relicensed. So this isn't a carte blanche. He can't just get it and then a year later sell it.
Okay.
It's not saleable like that. It has to go through the select board no matter what.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Alice von Leska, Select Board, Warren Ave. I did want to
agree with the gentleman that said it is very hard to keep small businesses running. And the applicant who arrived on our doorstep said that he would be very willing to work with just the beer and wine license if it were economically viable. He understood that a lot of people would want that as a first step. Unfortunately, it is not economically viable for him to put the business up in that regard. I think the travels that Rich Maori did and the outreach, I understand that perhaps he has not done outreach as much here in Harvard because he wanted to make sure, first of all, that he would even be able, to run his business the way he expected. But it's very obvious in the other two towns where he participates, he is a big part of the community. The major portion of this site is for fresh food, fresh offerings, food offerings, and convenience, groceries. And the food offerings, we actually do earn money off of that through our food tax that we have. The other point that we took to heart is because of its location, there will be a lot of traffic that comes in that will go in and literally buy food there that never comes into town, that would not come into town ever to participate in any of our other business offerings. And this allows us to capture people coming right off of Route 2, they grab stuff, and then they continue on Route 2. Thank you. I support this.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Eve Wittenberg, Prospect Hill Road. I have a concern, since we're talking about the other parts of this business, that the proposed owner of this facility said that he was going to be selling tobacco products as part of his business plan. While I understand we're talking about the liquor license, the other issues of what sort of a community member he intends to be have come up in conversation. And I want to express my concerns about additional tobacco sales in the town, which would indirectly be facilitated by granting or requesting an additional license. Everyone knows the public health ramifications of tobacco sales, and I think it would be a disservice to the town to indirectly facilitate additional sales by virtue of requesting an additional license. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the requirements that we have in Harvard...
Name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tim Schmoyer, Stowe Road.
Thank you.
One of the requirements that we have in Harvard, I think, is to build a mixed development in the commercial area. And the way I see this is we have residential in there, we have Dunkin' Donuts in there, we can bring in a convenience store in there. This actually starts to build out that capability. The people who live in that senior center right there will be able to walk down and get their food items and convenience items.
Talking to me. Come on.
So I think this would be a good try for Harvard to take a look at how we can create more walkable and more convenient areas. And I don't think we should punish this business owner when he does the economic model and comes to the town and says, this is what I can do for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Killian, 25 Candleberry Lane. This is a tough one for me, to be perfectly honest. Part of me says, let the market decide whether this guy's going to succeed. And another part of me says, a lot of times the market chooses wrong for the aesthetics and desirability of a small town. I'm going to be very blunt. I would worry about the impact of this license on the general store. The general store, I think, is hanging on by a thread, benefits from its liquor license, and this will divert. I don't think we're going to see people coming off of Route 2 and then coming into the general store. I think this will actually keep them from going into the general store. It will keep them from the center of town. There's pluses and minuses to that as well from a traffic point of view, but from an economic point of view, you are diverting customers from the center of town. And yes, Dagnalds worked very hard to get where he is, and he's seeing pressure too. And you can argue the market will prevail, but you are also responsible for diverting things from where you may want the business. independent of market. So I'm actually opposed to this only because I really want to see, I'm picking the winner, to be honest.
Thank you.
Charles Oliver, Simon Atherton Row. I just wanted to address a couple of the previous comments. Not granting or not making the petition to the legislature for the full license doesn't preclude him from opening in this business. This is not against this particular business owner. He's fully able to open the convenience store, have a beer and wine license, and see how it goes. The Grapevine went for years with only a beer and wine license, and they were a sustainable business. So I don't personally understand. I mean, he sees the full license as a more valuable asset for him, but it's not the only way to operate as a liquor retailer without the full license. It's not necessary. I count several beer and wine licensees in my as my customers, as my clients. I work in wine distribution, and I have a number of very successful wine and beer licenses only. I would also say their store in Southborough is one of my accounts, and I started doing business with them about 18 months ago. And I hesitated to characterize the business, in public, because I didn't want to necessarily get into to that level. I have issues with this article beyond the type of store that is being run in Southborough. But when I started working with them, I had a previous coworker that did business with them a number of years ago. When I went into that store for the first time, must have been June of 2020, I had to recover 5-year-old product that was still sitting in the shelves in order to get it onto the current vintage of wine. So it's a business that I don't think they have the wherewithal to actually serve our community properly. I think that people here are looking for a certain quality level of product and knowledge base, and I don't think that they have it. So that's my other issue with this article.
Okay, thank you.
Nathan Finch, Codman Hill Road. So we currently have one full liquor license that's actually in use, and then we have one more that's going to be in use soon. That's correct? So now we're saying that doubling the amount of liquor in town is not enough. We have to triple it. That seems unreasonable. Now, on top of that, I don't really like the placement next to Dunkin's. Lots of kids hang out there. It's walkable from the fields and track. I don't think we should be going to the state to say we need more liquor licenses and then use it for this spot here. I don't think we need it at all. I don't think it's a bad spot. That's all.
Thank you.
Melissa Martini, Air Road. As our town government, it's my understanding that your job and we all need to work together to meet the needs of the town. So the question is, do we really need another full alcohol business that's selling convenience foods and again will compete with the general store? My feeling is what we really need in this town, especially down in that section of town that may become a very large area where seniors live, is we need a pharmacy in this town.
Okay, thank you. So with no more discussion, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This does not pass. Article 13, amending the charter. Oh, there you are. Sneaking up on my right-hand side. Oop.
Yeah. Mr. Moderator, I move the town propose to amend Section 3.3 of the town charter by adding the following sentence to the end of said Section 3.3. The term of office for the 5 members will begin on the first business day in July following their election. Mr. Moderator, Susan Mary Redinger, Air Road, Chair of the School Committee. The school committee is putting this in.
I didn't hear a second. There we go.
Thank you. School committee is putting this on the ballot because of really we're committed to improving our practices, and as a review of what we have in place, members' current practice is that they would start following the election, and in recent history that has been anywhere between March and June. What we'd like to do is have it mirror the actual fiscal as well as academic calendar. There are benefits for us to do this because it allows members to come on board at a regular termination point of the school year that comes on board with less activity happening, so new members have more time to learn the job and do it at a time where there is ample opportunity to take a breath, as opposed to in the middle of a budget cycle or in the middle of what is particularly hard to do is new members come on board and they're immediately having to do a review of the superintendent, sometimes with 2 weeks of experience of working with that person. So it's a much more natural time for school committee members to start their term. It is not uncommon. Other towns have this start date, and even here in town, the historical commission members start in July. So we're proposing this as a best practice. We'd like to have it in the charter so there's no question about that start date moving forward.
Thank you. Any discussion? This requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor? All opposed? This passes with 2/3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 14 on the Town Commons.
Bob O'Shea, Old Littleton Road, Chair of Park and Recreation. I move that the town transfer the care, custody, management, and control of the town common, shown on Assessor's Map 17D as Lot 5 and containing 4.9 acres, more or less, and Lot 48 containing 0.14 of an acre, more or less, from the Parks and Rec Commission to the Select Board with no change of use in said land.
It's been seconded. Discussion?
So basically, Park and Rec has been on a mission to try to clarify our roles and responsibilities. We, at a previous annual town meeting, we made it clear that we had jurisdiction on the parks land. We've also built a memorandum of agreement with the CONSCOM for the Ann Lee Road, because that was very confusing of who was responsible for what, and we're working with the schools. There is no written memorandum of agreement with the schools right now on taking care of this field or the Pond Road field, and so we're trying to clarify that up. The town common, Lot 5, is broken up into a lot of little pieces by 110 and 111, and since I've been here, I came here in '92, you know, the select board has paved certain parts of Lot 5 up at the top to do parking. We had a movie theater come in and do some work there. There's been a subcommittee for the selectmen for the monument restoration. You know, these are all appropriate things, I think, for the select board to be doing and be in charge of. Yet, right now, when we had the fireman's muster and the lawn wasn't mowed, I had 4 or 5 people come up to me and say, how come Park and Rec didn't get the lawn mowed on the town common? So it's kind of it's a confusing thing. Right now, if you want to use the town common, there's a 3-page application for town events that you go to with, and there's a calendar that Julie keeps. And then Park and Rec has a calendar and a form online that you fill out to use the town common. So there's an overlap of responsibility, and we just think, and we present it to the select board, and we both think it's more appropriate for the select board to be in charge of the common, and that would allow Park and Rec to focus on the recreation fields in town.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Wallison, 1 Elm Street. How does this affect the daily maintenance on the common? I've lived on the common for 21 years. You do a very nice job doing that. How does it affect with the selectmen's control, how are they going to every day do what you do to keep the common the jewel that it is?
Okay, so thank you for the compliment, but it turns out DPW and the select board have the budget for all labor for the maintenance of the common and the fields. And this year's been a real struggle. We've been trying to work with DPW on mowing of all the fields. Obviously, there was a lot of rain. They have staffing issues. And so it's actually, your compliment goes to the DPW group that's been mowing, okay? So we're not really doing that. We get, when it's not done for a specific thing, we get blamed for it, but we don't have the budget to do that mowing or that labor. And so we're actually working on the ball fields, trying to catch up. And so, for example, this stone wall behind me here, you know, with the 6 feet of bittersweet on it, we're going to end up having to, you know, Parks and Rec is going out and paying to mow that ourselves because DPW hasn't gotten to it. So I think that nice compliment, but DPW's doing that, and they'll continue to do so.
Brad Bessie, Westcott Road. I always like to understand what's the problem we're trying to solve. If this was being mowed by DPW, would we even need this article?
I believe the problem we're trying to solve is that there's two different groups that get information about who should be and how each group should be.
Okay, so there's ambiguity around.
It's just a clarity of roles and responsibilities.
It has nothing to do with.
All right, I'm trying to, so there's Article 14 in that, which we're talking about, and there's also Article 15, which sounds like the fallback.
Let's stay on 14.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to understand why the select board would want to do this over Parks and Rec.
Got it.
This isn't what would be something I would say should be on the select board's plate. What is the advantage of the select board doing it versus what I would think Park and Rec would be more appropriate, quite frankly?
Okay.
I would like the select board focused on other more pressing things than who's mowing the town common.
So the Park and Rec voted to try to do more important things also, right? The maintenance of the town common, we have no programs on the town common, where our mission is to provide new recreation for the children and citizens in the town. We've been able to start spending a little bit of time on new things like the boat kiosk and stuff, right? But but this maintenance stuff is not something that's in our mission at all.
The maintenance is under select board. They control that part of it for all of it.
Right.
Okay? This is about the use and who oversees the use of the common.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ben Guthrie, Fairbanks Street. Currently, the A-frame signage on the common is currently under your commission. Would that also move, or would that stay where it is? Because that kind of falls under same sort of stuff.
Sure. So we have some rules and regulations on A-frame signage. The select board has agreed to take those same rules and regulations. We also have rules like no vehicles and no overnight camping and okay. Those same rules and regulations would apply. So all the signage, now we would actually have town employees going and checking those signage instead of trying to make the volunteers do it.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. With no further discussion, this needs a majority vote to pass. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes by majority. Article 15, Town Commons alternate.
So Article 15, I move to take no action on this article.
That's been seconded, so there's no motion not to take motion. We're not going to take action on this. Do I have to vote that? Yeah. Okay, so we need to vote that. That's majority. All those in favor? All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Article 16.
Mr. Moderator, Stu Sklar, Select Board Chair, Scott Road. I move that the town transfer $281.50 from the General Stabilization Fund to pay a prior year fiscal bill of Rhode Island Analytic and authorize the Finance Director to pay said bill.
That's been seconded.
This is a fairly standard housekeeping article that we have we have a bill from prior fiscal year that we need to clean up, and we like to pay that bill and not have a problem with the vendor.
Any discussion? This needs, really, you're gonna make me work, 4/5 of a vote. This needs 4/5 of a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, that passes unanimously. Article 17, ambulance retained earnings.
Mr. Moderator, Stu Sklar, Chair Select Board, Scott Road. I move that the town amend its vote under Article 18 of the warrant for the first session of the 2021 annual town meeting held on May 15th, 2021 by 1. Deleting from said vote other departmental revenue, $113,612, and replace said words and amount with fiscal year 2021 ambulance retained earnings, $95,000. 2, decreasing the total revenue for the ambulance enterprise fund for fiscal year 2022 to $245,000. And 3, decreasing the direct expense and total expense for said fund for fiscal year 2022 to $245,000.
It's been seconded.
Again, this is, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is just bookkeeping and to make everything legal, what we're doing here, and to correct our vote from the Springtown meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion? This requires majority. All in favor? All opposed? This passes unanimously. Article 18, climate resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Paul Green, Old Littleton Road. I move that the town adopt the resolution relative to climate change as printed on pages 28 and 29 of the warrant for the 2021 Town of Harvard annual town meeting, second session.
It's been seconded.
So this article is a joint effort by the Energy Advisory Committee of Harvard and the Community Resiliency Working Group, chaired by Ellen Sachs-Fleischer, standing next to me here. I will introduce the article, and both Ellen and I will be available to answer questions. The intent of this article is to create a process managed by the Select Board under which our local town government will address issues related to climate change. Select Board members have told me that they strongly support this article, and if approved, will act upon it. This is a local effort to manage local activities initiated by local citizens, aimed at our local government, under the watchful eye of local residents. We aim to align the efforts of all local officials, boards, and committees towards a set of climate-related goals. We propose to adopt the same climate-related greenhouse gas reduction goals as Massachusetts itself. So what does this article say, and what will it accomplish? The article consists of two parts. The first part, background and purpose, states the case for how our climate is changing and the need to take local action. This part is not intended for debate. The science is clear, compelling, and trusted. The second part, the resolutions, state what this town intends to do, namely, 1, we adopt the state greenhouse gas reduction goals and any subsequent modification of them, and we agree to help meet those goals. 2, we seek to understand how local activities affect our climate, and we commit to reducing the impact of our activities on climate change. 3, we agree to create a process and require its use by which we will assess all local activities with respect to their impact on climate change, and we will include this information in future town warrant articles. 4, and finally, We agree to all work together to respond to the threats posed by climate change. Adoption of this article by town meeting today charges the select board with implementing these resolutions and reporting progress back to town meeting within 1 year, and thereafter providing yearly progress reports. This article does not affect actions taken by private citizens. Harvard was one of the first towns in the state to qualify for the Green Communities program, joining the program in its first year, 2010. There are now 280 green communities in the state. We can be proud of that trailblazing effort. We now have the opportunity to again be a leader among Massachusetts towns by adopting this resolution. And let me say, we may not live to see the world of 2030 or 2050, but our children and grandchildren will be here. Do this for yourself, do this for them. Our time of action is now. Please vote in favor of this article. Ellen and I are happy to take your questions. Thank you.
So, as we proceed, the focus is on those 4 things Paul read to give the power to the select board. That's the focus of this conversation, okay? And Paul, I hope I make to see 2030. It's not that far. Please. Billy.
I may be in that senior continuing care retirement community, but I intend to be here in 2032.
Good.
Billy Salter, Elm Street. This actually is directed to you, Mr. Moderator, to sort of underscore your last point and maybe to caution further speakers. I don't think we should spend our time discussing, you know, what we think of climate science and the impact of, you know, 0.7 degrees versus 0.9 degrees. I mean, I have my own strong opinions, which I'm happy to express if asked. But we should focus on whether Harvard, the town of Harvard, should pass this resolution. I strongly think that we should, but let us not get into debates about how long ago the dinosaurs were really here and, you know, if it got too cold for them or too hot. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Dee Dee Chadron, Old Littleton Road, and Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I just wanted to note that the Community Preservation Committee took a vote in our September 22 meeting to endorse the resolution. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Warner. I'm on East Bear Hill Road, and
Into
I'm a member.
the mic, please, so I can hear you.
I'm a member of the Community Resilience Working Group. I'm also a mother of a 5-year-old, and many people, possibly of a slightly younger age group than me, think about whether we should even have children. I was lying awake last night thinking if I had done the right thing by having a child. I love living here because we are a multi-generational community, and we value this place. There's a lot we can do on a local level, and by caring for this town and the people that live in it, we literally find common ground. We want to raise our families here. There's so much we can do together locally to lower our carbon footprint, and it's good for all of us. I hope we will vote to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, Stacy Donahue, Old Littleton Road. I'm a former Climate Resiliency Working Group member and the prior MVP group member and a member of the Planning Board. As a Planning Board member, I go to the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission on behalf of Harvard every month. And I can tell you that because of our green community status, we have won grants for our town. I would encourage everyone to support this, because if we have this climate statement and a climate plan fully adopted, it will make us more eligible for more grants. These are grants that include things like roadway improvements, purchase of open space to help carbon sequestration, help with watershed and pond management, purchase of backup generators for storms, lots of things. You can look at MRPC's website to see a list of grants. And like I said, I just encourage everyone to support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce Nickerson on Stowe Road. I am fully in accord with the objectives of this resolution, Mr. Moderator, but I would appreciate it if you could ask the town council to clarify the extent or power of the words commits. Because if commits actually commits the town, then we may want to modify this language a little bit. For example, it says we commit to developing an environmental assessment process to review all purchases. I don't think we want an environmental review process to determine exactly which brand of paper they should buy for the copy machine. But that is a purchase. So if the town is committing to do all of the things in here and it's binding, then I would want to offer a amendment.
So town council advised me this is a non-binding resolution, so the language can be adjusted.
That's exactly what I needed to know, because if it was binding, I had real trouble with some of the language.
Understood. Thank you.
Hello again, Rachel Cope, Littleton County Road. I just wanted to, first of all, I want to, I'm in support of the resolution and I wanted to applaud the effort. I wanted to offer the perspective of the food and agriculture industry in which I work. This is now seen in those industries and many other industries as business resiliency, and having some perspective over years, the language might not be perfect, and it never is, and a lot of things change, but taking a step and, you know, making a statement and a resolution to support what's already there statewide, it is a step in the right direction, and it aligns with what is being seen as basic business resiliency now. And I actually didn't intend to speak on this at all today, but I was really inspired last night. We were watching, there's a new NOVA out where it was on an Arctic voyage to take some baseline climate data in the Arctic. I highly recommend it. And I was really inspired by one of the researchers who said, if not now, when? And that's the thought I wanted to bring to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon McCarthy, East Bear Hill Road. I'm also on the Board of Health, and the Board of Health at our previous meeting voted unanimously to endorse this resolution. And I would just like to point out that the Board of Health looks at a lot of health issues related to the town, and climate change impacts disease transmission through insect and climate change is increasing the breeding season for insects, and that impacts public health, and what we need to do is to slow that down. So we support this resolution.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Steve Richter, Hines Lane. In contrast to all the other speakers, I'm going to speak against this resolution. By definition, science is never clear. It is subject to change based on new data and observations. If science consensus were always correct, then Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein would have been failures. Rather than rely on the views of scientists who do not study climate or who shape their opinions based on the best way to get grants to continue their work, we should rely more on those scientists who have actually studied not just theories and models, but have studied actual data of what's going on with the climate. Examples would be Willie Soon, Art Robinson, and many other scientists. Many of us recall the scare of the 1970s, where it was thought that global cooling was taking place, which would lead to famine and other deleterious effects. That has not occurred should give pause to those who are once again crying wolf about the climate. The climate models used to justify conclusions of catastrophic warming have been shown to be grossly exaggerated. In looking at the history of climate over the past 3,000 years, the average temperatures have been significantly higher than they are today. The warming we have been seeing over the past 50 years is a recovery from the Little Ice Age of the 1700s, and the climate has not yet returned back to the average. Moreover, the warming since the 1700s has not accelerated as the atmospheric carbon dioxide and other so-called greenhouse gases have increased from almost zero compared to today in the past 125 years. There's also the question of cause versus effect. Since much of the world's carbon dioxide, which is not caused by the increase in carbon dioxide, is resulting in carbon dioxide increase through outgassing of the oceans as the oceans warm from the recovery from the Little Ice Age. Enacting the climate change resolution would be akin to tilting at windmills. The natural increase in carbon dioxide due to warming from the Little Ice Age is going to occur whether or not we reduce our own relatively minor emissions. Deciding to be quixotic by voting for the resolution would have effects ranging from nil to increasing hunger and poverty among the less fortunate people of the world, who would be deprived not only of the food from plant life which relies on increased carbon dioxide, but also of the energy needed to feed themselves as well as to lift themselves out of poverty. Concerning the latter, while there are better ways to produce energy than by burning carbon fuels and thus reducing carbon dioxide, nuclear and fusion energy are not yet available in the quantities needed, and solar and wind energy are currently quite inadequate to serve their needs.
Right.
All right. I think that was a letter in the press this week, if I remember correctly. Anyways, Brad Bessie, Westcott Road. I just want to share, Boston Globe had an article this summer in August that they have a goal of converting 1 million homes by 2030 off of heating with oil and natural gas to actually going to energy efficient heat pump. And which means they need 100,000 homes a year converting, and as of 2021, they're only getting about 460. So it's pretty pathetic. Fully supporting this article just because I think it's a first step for the town of Harvard to be able to then start to promote and recommend or require new building or reconstruction to use alternate, more greener tech like heat pumps. And even if you are disagreeing of the science, I think everyone should want to spend less money to heat their home than oil and gas, which is what the new tech allows. So all in favor for it.
Thank you, Brad.
Hi, Seth Trotz, 14 Fairbanks. First of all, there were many things that I would take issue with in the previous speaker who was arguing about climate science, which is not up for debate. I will say in particular, I take great personal offense at his insinuation that scientists are simply saying what they need to get grant money and are not following a true scientific method. I will bet my PhD in experimental physics from MIT against his opinions regarding climate science any day of the week.
Okay, let's not go after people.
I support this. I support this proposal, and I move we vote on it.
So the warrant article has been moved. We need to vote on that. All those in favor? He moved it. Oh, we can't. I'm sorry.
Lucy Wallace, Orchard Hill, I move the question.
Has it been seconded? All those in favor? All those opposed? Question has been moved. So, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes by majority. Article 19, citizens petition on the sale of the Bromfield House and land.
Can you hear me through this mask? Or should I take it off?
A little closer, please.
Bev Rodriguez, citizen,
Address?
Old Littleton Road.
Thank you.
I move that the town will vote to direct the select board to sell the parcel of land with the building thereon known and numbered as 39 Massachusetts Avenue, Harvard, Massachusetts, and described in the deed dated June 2, 1982, and recorded with the Worcester District Registry of Deeds in Book 7951, page 344, as a private residence. And B, direct the Harvard Historical Commission to initiate the process of including the property in an historic district or take any vote or votes thereto.
It's been seconded.
Okay, thank you. I am Bev Rodriguez. I grew up in Harvard and recently returned to live in my family home. My family history will explain why I am the spokesperson for this citizen petition. 90 years ago, my mother's family gave 37 acres on Oak Hill Road to Harvard College for their observatory. In 2007, my father gave 40 acres of conservation land. My grandfather, James Albion Dunlap, lived in the Bromfield House for 37 years as principal of the school. My father, James Jr., was born there. I hope to honor all of these people and their legacies by representing the citizens of Harvard who have brought this petition here in defense of the historical Bromfield House and the legacy that it represents. The school offices that occupied the Bromfield House have moved to the new elementary school. And now it is urgent that we decide what to do with the vacated house so it is not left to deteriorate. At the spring town meeting, the select board presented an article that asked for removal of the house in order to clear the land beneath it. It did not pass. At this meeting today, we are trying to present a better solution that voters can approve. Our proposal is to sell the Bromfield House and land intact to a private owner for use as a residence, and to make sure that there are provisions to preserve the exterior appearance of the property. The Harvard Historical Commission is prepared to support these efforts. In our handout, which some of you didn't get, I think, because we couldn't put them by the door, if anybody wants one, please, there are some here, and if you want to notify these folks over here, they'll hand you some if you want to put a hand up. But I'm going to summarize that handout. And you've probably seen it in the Harvard press as well. It's the same, the one that was in the press. We have challenged the benefits. We have outlined, in that handout, we have outlined the benefits of this proposal, and we have tried to answer some of the questions that might challenge our views. The town has made it clear that it sees the Bromfield House as a money pit and is reluctant to maintain it. The cost of bringing the house up to code for public use is seen as prohibitive. The school committee has surplused the house. Both the town and the school see the house as a burden. We see it as an irreplaceable asset. And we think our proposal actually addresses the needs of all of these parties, the citizens, the town, and the schools. For our citizens, Harvard's historical New England character and beauty are the main reason why we have chosen to live here. Keeping the entire attractive Bromfield House property intact in its proper place preserves its historical integrity. For the town, a sale provides financial benefits in terms of avoiding the considerable expense of clearing and remediating a lot. and it provides annual tax revenues estimated at $10,000. For the Bromfield School, all of the proceeds from a sale will be dedicated to educational purposes, adhering to the wishes of the donor. The Bromfield trustees have committed to working with the town to determine their best use. The estimated market value of the house in the current market is $400,000 to $800,000. If the property is sold intact, as we suggest, the historical house will remain in its proper place. It will remain as a landmark honoring the legacy of the donor, and it will continue to enhance the entrance to our town. The sale will ease the town's financial burden, and it will provide enormous benefit to the Bromfield School. We would suggest to our fellow residents that you lose the heart and soul of a place when you ignore the legacies and the generosities of those who come before you. Thank you.
Discussion?
Ken Guthrie, Fairbanks Street. To the point of the legacies of those who came before you, the town explicitly chose to draw the line of the historical district around the Bromfield House and around the schools. That allowed the house to not be maintained in the same manner that the rest of us who live in the historic districts are required. The building looks fine from afar, but if you get up close, you see it has not aged well. It has not been maintained at the level that it should have been. We should not be selling town land off for a house that is really not up to snuff. The median home sales in the past year have increased by, I think it's around 10 to 12%. The average home price, according to an email I got a little while ago, was somewhere around $860. So this is on the lower end of the sales that you should see in the town center. That's probably because it's really not maintained very well. If you actually go up and into it, you can see why. Because it is not in the historic district, any sale would not be subject to those rules. So let's say we vote to sell it, and it gets sold in a month before we get a chance to modify any historic overlay. That allows the buyer to come in and level that house should they so choose. There is no requirement for them to maintain the historic nature of the house. And in fact, we as a town have said that it is not historic by drawing the lines around it. Thank you.
Pete Jackson, Jacob Gates Road, and Bromfield trustee. I'm going to read a statement that was developed a few days ago by all 8 trustees. First of all, we support this article, as we did prior to the previous town meeting where the select board's plan was not voted. Whatever disposition plan is decided, the trustees' commitment is to consider whether the plan is in keeping with the intent of the will of Margaret Bromfield Blanchard and join in the petition to present to the Worcester Probate Court and the State Attorney General. Sale of the property is contemplated in a 1981 court decree with the condition that any proceeds must be used for the and I'm going to quote, for the educational purposes set forth in the trust under the will of Margaret Bromfield Blanchard, end quote. The trustees are amenable to working with the town to come up with a plan acceptable to all parties for the use of the proceeds to benefit the education of the students of the Bromfield School. The trustees are committed to participate in a coordinated effort to find a plan which will be acceptable to the Worcester Probate Court and the State Attorney General. I'd like to add that all the previous changes, including the change of Old Bromfield to a library, as well as the gift in 1981 to the town, was based on a joint petition between the town and the trustees. So that went to the court, and then the court confirms whether it's okay, and they may add conditions to it. This was a gift to the town from the trustees in 1981 with conditions. It's not the kind of gift that you would want on Christmas morning, but it does have conditions that we have to abide by. And I'd like to also say I'd be willing to sit down with the select board or the school committee and discuss these issues so that whatever plan is decided, whether it's to keep the land or to sell the property, I would be willing to sit down and we can work this out so we can file a joint petition. Otherwise, we're just going to roll along, kick the can down the road, and nothing's going to happen. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Cara Minar, Still River Road. I want to thank Pete for his comments because I think it helps clarify something. As it currently stands, any proceeds that would be gotten from the sale of the Bromfield house would go to the Bromfield trustees. So it wouldn't add to the coffers of the municipal budget or the town. And the other piece was, generally speaking, in 1878, and although I know Pete did speak that at some future date there may be an opportunity to discuss other ways to parcel out the money, but as it currently stands, if the house was sold, those proceeds wouldn't go to the town municipal budget. They would go to the Bromfield trustees, currently speaking, and for their discretionary spending, of which generally has been top 10 students or so that graduate from Bromfield that are headed to college, they get scholarships. And my concern would be that we are selling a town asset then that would give those scholarships to the top 10 students who may or may, it's not based on financial need, who may or may not need that financial need for the colleges that they're going to. And my thinking is that if this is a town asset and it's to the spirit and intent that Margaret Bromfield wanted, was to make sure that those assets were used for kids that are currently in the schools and not to export that asset money out to some colleges somewhere else. So I think, generally speaking, this asset is important for the town. I agree with Pete that we should figure out something, but generally, I think that municipal land is very difficult to come by for future uses. But I just wanted to make that clarifying point, that people think that if it's sold for $800,000, that somehow that will offset the municipal budget. And as it currently stands, that's not true. Thanks.
Mr. Moderator, Susan Mary Redinger, Ayer Road, Chair of the School Committee. I just want to let folks know the school committee voted and reiterated that support for that vote to recommend to the select board to keep that parcel of land as municipal land. While we recognize that it has a restriction on it, it needs to be used primarily for educational purposes. We haven't had the time yet, and the town has not seen what that could be. There are signs, yard signs I've seen up saying honor a Bromfield house. Well, I'd rather honor Margaret Bromfield Blanchard, and I'd rather have her gift to the town be sustained, that land could be a Margaret Bromfield Blanchard Park. It could have an outdoor learning pavilion on it. As you know, we're here, we're under a tent. I hope we're not under this tent in a year. I hope so, or even 6 months from now. But we've discovered the real appeal and benefits of having kids outdoors and in educational settings. So it could be learning pavilions. It could have a recreational component to it. We have not yet had the time to show the town what that piece of land could be. So I urge people to keep in mind the importance of municipal land, as Cara said. That lot is worth well more than whatever we might see from it. And while we would look forward to working with the Bromfield trustees, if that is what happens, that is a short-term money for the value of that land and what that could be. So I would like to just reiterate the school committee's support for keeping that land and really visioning how that gift that she did give us could be there for many years to come. Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Moderator. Jennifer Finch, Codman Hill Road. I would like to thank the Dunlop family for their generosity in the past. Question I have is this question binding?
This is a non-binding.
Thank you, sir.
Jared Walliston, 1 Elm Street. I've been a historic restoration of properties throughout Boston for over 45 years, and came here 21 years ago to restore another house that had fallen into complete disrepair at 1 Elm Street. I have viewed this property as part of the legacy of not only the trust, but the legacy of the town. It is a remembrance of something that is important to us, and that I'd like to see that we stand there and restore the house, sell it, get the money. There are 26 other acres of land behind this on the schools on Fairfield that could be developed. And even though it has some wetlands, it could be a natural open classroom, if you will. But there will only be one historic Bromfield house that was built to provide housing for the principal and headmaster. And we do not have a lot of other houses that have this neoclassical Georgian revival type of architecture. And I would only hope that people will see that there's other opportunities to have fields and educational facilities elsewhere, but keep this prominent house and its legacy as a piece of fine architecture like the other houses in the center of town. And it could be part of the historic district. And also, I have dealt in selling a lot of properties where we put restrictions on the buyer of a property to give them reasonable assurances that the historical caliber of the house is maintained. So I urge us, there'll only be one Bromfield house. There's other places for playgrounds. Please keep this piece of venerable architecture intact. Thank you.
Ellen Sachs Leisure, Warren Ave. I also think, as said by a few people before, that keeping the land is important for the town. 50 years from now, who knows what we'll need. But I also think the house is really important. So one idea, I'm just going to throw it out there, but it's another idea because I think that's what the town needs, is possibly converting it to affordable housing. So there's money from the Housing Trust that maybe they would be interested in, from the Bromfield trustees, to convert that, make it into maybe 2 apartments that could then be rented as affordable housing to people who work in the school district. So it would go back to someone from the school district who works in the school district living in it. So it goes back to the educational purposes, and then it's also used and kept by the town rather than getting rid of it.
Pete Jackson again, Jacob Gates Road. Some of the statements that previous speakers have made tell me that there's a lot of confusion about the role of the Bromfield trustees. One of them was that the scholarships are given out to the top 10. Also that the money leaves town because it goes to some college. We benefit from people entering town from other towns that got scholarships from there. So I think scholarships are still a valid value to the town and to the students. Another statement was, and we also go beyond just the top 10 people, top 10 students. In the last few years, we've averaged about $50,000 to $80,000 in academic prizes and scholarships. I think another statement was that land should be kept because it could be used for an outdoor classroom, nature study. You have to remember that it's surrounded on 2 sides by a state highway. It's only 2 acres. And now there's a new road access to the school that's on the 3rd boundary of that property. Also, as somebody mentioned before, there's a natural area. There's 26 acres right adjacent to the school. It was acquired in 1967 for school purposes. It has been used as a nature study area, and I'd say that's safer, more secure, more closer to administration, and much quieter to be used as outdoor study and nature study. I think to convert that 2-acre lot that's a house lot into a nature study area or an outdoor classroom, which is significantly far from the school itself, when right out the front door is 26 acres that hasn't been used. So I just leave that, and I still support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Alice Von Leska, Warren Ave. I'm speaking as a private citizen, but also just in full disclosure, I'm the definite minority view on the select board on this issue, in that I fully support selling the house and land together. I think Jared said it far more eloquently than I could regarding the historic value of the home. And that entrance to Harvard with the Bromfield house on one side of the street, the other two houses on the other, forms an entrance to a village, and then you move on through. And I think it's really important to maintain the historic integrity. I totally agree with his statement that regardless of where the historic district ends, you can put binding restrictions on a sale that would maintain it as is. I think that people are hopeful that perhaps the house could be moved somewhere, sold as a house. While that might be possible, it has a lot of risk associated with it, and my intrinsic objection to that is that then a private individual who buys the house at a very minimal price, puts money into it, and then sells it elsewhere, they gain the economic value, and the town loses that economic value, because then, yes, it has retained the land, but it has completely lost the economic value that it would gain from having it sold as a complete property. And the last piece is, I understand people are very reluctant. There seems to be the mantra that you never, ever, ever, ever sell town land, and especially if it's adjacent to the schools. I've sat on the school building committee nearly from the beginning of the process. We looked at over and over and over again what could be done with that land. We have fabulous architects. They looked at it, topography for a field, and because of the topography, even to do a park with some of the things that have been suggested will require a tremendous amount of investment in retaining walls, et cetera. And they said, no, it is not viable, for a field. You can do things with it, but it will be very expensive. Simultaneously, when we made cuts in the budget, there were plans for an outdoor classroom. It was decided that the money was not, that was not of high enough value to maintain it, and so it was cut from the budget. So to cut that from the school budget and then say later, let's spend money that is not in any budget to put an outdoor classroom, to me, does not fit well with some of the decisions that we made in the past. That's just about everything I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, I see the queue keep going. If it's more additional thought, something outside of what someone's been said, that's what I'd like to hear.
Bonnie Hudorfer, Stowe Road. I speak in favor of this. I do think we should sell the house and the land. There have been some proposals for uses such as pickleball courts, skateboard park, pump track, all of which I think are legitimate uses that the town should be exploring and should be moving toward creating, just not in that location. And my concern, I do echo pretty much what Alice and Jared said about the selling it with certain restrictions in place. But right now, the biggest reason you want it there is we've got all this open space, and just from the packaged sewage treatment plant on Mass Ave all the way up there, we've got open space, cemetery, and there's no there. This town doesn't need more open space and grass in the center of town. The highest and best use of an historic property built as a residence in an historic district is as a home. A historic district to be preserved as such, and sell it and let somebody enjoy it and have the lights on at night. Thank you.
Billy Salter, Elm Street again. I came up here to speak against selling it. One of the things I was going to note is that $600K can get swallowed in the school budget, and it'll just go to some fine, swell school purpose and have little impact, while the land could be used for something we don't know. But I am forced to admit that Bonnie Hudorfer just convinced me to change my mind. So, I know, that's exciting because people think I never change my mind. But I think it makes sense to sell it, to take what will be a fairly small sum of money in the context of the town, but not in the context of the Bromfield trustees, and to make sure there are some requirements on the people who buy the house. Thank you.
So, again, if it's a new thought to the discussion, because just in favor of it, that's what our cards tell us, okay? So if you have a new piece of information, please share.
Pam Marston, Madigan Lane, former chair of the Historical Commission. I want to thank Bev for bringing this petition forward. I know it's non-binding at this point, but the Historical Commission, as part of its duties, has talked to Massachusetts Historical Commission, indicating that they would be in favor of us adding that house to the historical district in the Common. A number of people have come up to me today and told me that it was not possible. I beg to differ, and we will try our darndest to make sure that this can happen so that the house can be protected in the future if it is sold. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, Stu Sklar, Scott Road, speaking as a resident, but being a little knowledgeable, being chair of the Board of Selectmen. Just a few points of clarification. The 26 acres behind the school are virtually all wetlands. Very little buildable or usable space except for hiking trails or a trail like that. You never sell land in the center of town. As the speaker talked about, Harvard University has a policy of never ever selling land. They abandoned the observatory 20 years ago. They're not getting rid of that. They're keeping it because they don't pay taxes on it. We don't know what the future is going to hold. Land contiguous to land you already own in the center of town is very valuable to the town. And as was pointed out, the school committee voted they have educational purposes for it. So all this tends to be a moot point because then it would stay in town land. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce?
Bruce Nickerson, Stowe Road. My wife and I had the privilege of moving to Harvard almost 20 years ago, and we've been actively involved in the town and have loved being here. But over the years, repeatedly, as I have thought about this town, I've thought about how sterile, to me, the center of town was, with all the public buildings and nothing much else. And my reaction to the sale of Bromfield House is that it simply makes one more piece of sterility to the center of what used to be at one time a very active, lively town, and now is almost reduced to just the general.
Melissa Martini, Air Road. My husband's family moved to Harvard when he was 3, and we have lived here for 30 years. And in that time, I guess I have a question for the Board of Selectmen. Does this town have a deferred maintenance budget? Now, and I'm saying this seriously because you look at the town-owned buildings that have been vacated in recent years. The old library, and now the town, doesn't have a budget to maintain our public buildings and spaces. We don't have it in the budget for that type of deferred maintenance.
So what's happened with the old library? We've tried to find different uses of that space. Now we have the Hildreth House, which will not be used as a senior center once we have the new senior center. So how is that building going to be used? Where are we going to get the money to maintain the slate roof and the expensive Hildreth House? So why do we want to keep another building that we don't have it in our budget to maintain, or tear it down and lose the asset of selling it to someone who, like myself, grew up in historic homes and really values the history of the home and maintaining that character? So I support this, and thank you for all your work on the citizens petition.
Mr. Mayor, Rich Mayority, I move the question.
It's been seconded. We'll vote on moving the question. It takes a 2/3 vote. All those in favor to move the question? All those opposed? Question has been moved. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This passes by 2/3. Remember, Election Day is November 2nd. This meeting's been dissolved. Do what? I dissolved it. Someone want to move to dissolve the meeting? It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. Have a good day. Appreciate your time. Thank you.